everyone, and welcome back once again to the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. I'm your host, my name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, I have Josh Torres,
Hi, hello.
Adam Vitale,
Hello.
and James. Oh, nope, not James. Yeah, I'm so
James
used
is
to
not
saying
here.
James. Chow. And Chow's here. Chow Min Woo.
How's it going?
I totally just went on
James
autopilot.
is James is living his best life in Tokyo right now. He does a Tokyo Game Show where he has dubbed it as the Tokyo James Show, which is not that's
Did he
pretty
dub
true.
that or did you dub that?
No, so actually Tony did, and its staff I believe dubbed that, and then he
Oh,
stole it from
okay.
Tony. He's like, I'm
There you
stealing
go.
that, which is good.
But yeah,
But
that's the big news of this week is that we are recording this is it like the last day of Tokyo Game Show today or it just ended? We're on the tail end of it, but at the time of recording
yeah,
this.
I
By the
think
time
I think tonight is the last day, I believe, either tonight or tomorrow night.
So yeah, as we're recording this, we have gotten a lot of correspondence from James, across the Pacific over at Tokyo Game Show. Of course, a lot of news to cover. It seems like the theme of the day in terms of Tokyo Game Show is a lot of new footage and new information for previously announced games, especially focused on games releasing in 2024, and a few release dates to go alongside of that. And so we'll kind of go through these in some order here, because of course we had a little bit of a time delay in terms of when they're presented live on stage at the show versus when we get the trailers and everything uploaded by official media channels, etc., and so on. And then outside of Tokyo Game Show, RGG Studio, Nice America, a few other things kind of got announced alongside in the same sort of deluge of news drops. So quite a few things to go into here. We don't really have a big slate of games to talk about in terms of like games we've been playing section ahead of the news. We have a few things here that will kind of tee off at least a little bit. We have a lot of people that are working on things that are coming out, so a lot of things are still kind of under embargo. One thing that is coming out in the next couple days is something where it's been a bit of a mixed bag, a mixed feeling in terms of how much excitement I've seen for it, and it's the update to Cyberpunk 2077. So Phantom Liberty, at the time of we're recording this, is coming out in like 3 or 4 days, but we have we're recording this 2 days past the relaunch, the Cyberpunk 2.0, the free update. So I have re-downloaded the game and started a new file. So I have played a little bit of the 2.0 update, but of course I have not played Phantom Liberty, even though I'm intending to. So Phantom Liberty, I do have a code for it, and I do have access to it. So I could have played it. However, like I haven't booted up Cyberpunk in like since it launched, since I originally beat it. So when I first booted it up, I basically got like all these splash screens about all these updates and things. And it's like, by the way, we reset all your perks because what you had wasn't valid anymore. By the way, all your stats are reset to 0. Redo your attributes. And I was just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let me just start fresh, because going back to an RPG, even one that hasn't changed so much, can be difficult after time away. So I'm just like, all right.
And it's not like you just missed, or you're just jumping in for the 2.0 update. You missed like the 1.1 update, the 1.2 update. You missed all the updates since launch to now. That's a lot.
Yeah. So it was actually kind of fun. I've been chatting with Josh Tolentino and Alex, like, this thing, I don't remember it. Is this new or old new sort of thing?
Yeah, like
is this 2.0 new?
Is my memory failing me? Did I just forget this, or is this actually new?
Yeah. So I don't want to spend too much time on Cyberpunk, because I don't want to spend like 45 minutes talking about the game now and then next week getting into Phantom Liberty and spending like another big chunk of time. So I'll probably just kind of tee it off here and then kind of like rain check for when I do get to Phantom Liberty. But I do want to talk about the 2.0 update in general. First of all, the main thing that is different is the progression and character build in general, like the actual moment to moment gameplay, the actual like layout of the city, of course, the way the game starts out. None of that has really changed. I always want to be careful using words like, oh, it's completely overhauled, they fixed it. Well, it still has the same look and feel. So if that was something that was you played the game and didn't like that, or you didn't play the game because it wasn't conducive to your tastes, I'm not going to tell you, oh, you got to try it now. It's completely different. It's not completely
Right.
different. It's just shifted. The main thing though that they did change is you still have the attributes that you put points into, body, cool, technical. They kind of generally go along the tabletop game like class systems of like the solo, the netrunner. I'm forgetting some of the other ones because I haven't played the tabletop game. But now what they also do is you have a skill system. And I know when I say like perks, talents, skills, every game uses those interchangeably. So I have to tee it up a little bit. They have a skill system which is passive. You don't put points into it. You get EXP into it as you perform things. For instance, if you go barreling through doors and punching people in the face, you will build up your body skill. If you start hacking into laptops and, taking over cameras, you will build up your netrunner skill. If you just be stealthy and you start doing headshots and things like that, that will improve your, I forget what they call it, maybe just netrunner skill. One that I've been using is I've started using a katana, which it's the shinobi skill. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a bit specific, but I'll go with that. So it is very much like exercised progression in terms of
Right. You
you
get
don't tell
stronger as you exercise it. Yeah.
yeah, I wonder if there's a good name for that. It's not I'm putting points into this because I want to be better at this. I'm gonna say I'm going to do this thing because I want to be better at it. So I'm
Right.
going to improve my netrunner skill by hacking things and by doing things. And the nice thing is that these are almost always like as you improve your skill, and they tier up like from 1 to 50. Like for instance, if you tier up into like level 5 of the solo skill, they call it solo. It basically means like it would be like the strength based character effectively. You get additional carry capacity because this game does have a weight limit, and it's like, oh, that's handy to have no matter what build you are. So even if you're trying to build like a techie hacky character, you should probably try to put a few points into body, or not into body, into the solo skill progression, so that you can get your carry capacity up. And the shinobi, the first one, is like increased to your base movement speed, so it does encourage trying to change up your playstyle a little bit in that way. And another thing that they kind of do to leverage, because you might hear that and be like, well, that sounds nice, but that's not really an overhaul. And I kind of agree. It's not really an overhaul, but I do think there's a lot more immediate feedback to it. But they also can play with it in terms of exploration, rewarding that, because now as you defeat enemies in like the police scanners or the gigs or whatever, they might have EXP shards where this character that you defeated was a netrunner and they are carrying a netrunner EXP shard that you can grab and boost that stat up a little bit. So it kind of encourages you to like seek out all those optional objectives, because you might not be putting a lot of points into netrunner, but then if you get a free boost because you took on a quest where you're encountering one, then you might get some bonuses that way as well. Trying to think what else I want to tee up here before rain checking for next week.
I've been hearing a lot of positive things from like my friends who have been checking it out. Like they seem to really like the new progression overhauls. And there's all sorts of like one of them is running around like a maniac with a katana, with like mecha like super duper legs. Others are checking out the overhauls like the hacking stuff. So it seems like at least from my end of things, from what I hear, um, people who were down on it seem to be very positive now on like the new way you progress, and just like the gameplay variety and changes to it. I do plan on finally starting Cyberpunk. I do have the game and the DLC. I just need to find time to do it because I'm working on other stuff. Um, but yeah, it seems to be just like a really good like, hey, this is people of course probably wish this is the game that they got on release, but they got there, eventually. And it seems like everyone and everything that we've been seeing from like Phantom Liberty reviews, like from Alex who gave it a perfect score on our site, and then from other outlets who have been swearing it pretty fucking high. It seems like there's a lot to be excited for in the upcoming DLC as well.
But then there is kind of a little bit of that elephant in the room. It's like, well, most outlets called the base game pretty high,
That's
and
true.
look how that turned out.
Very
So
much
I'll
so,
be honest,
yeah.
when I look at when the original Cyberpunk came out, Alex and I were the two people that had code. I focused on guys who did the review, and like he scored it much higher than I would have. But I'm not saying that's wrong. That's what an opinion is. That's what a review is. But when he gives it a 10 for the Phantom Liberty, I'm kind of like, okay, like I'll see what I think.
Mhm.
One thing I do remember I want to talk about is, first of all, the thing you mentioned. Yeah, there's just like obviously new types of weapons, new gear, and I don't really like, since I haven't done the Phantom Liberty proper part yet. Like it used to be that your different types of leg implants, you could have the double jump or the charge jump. Now they have different ones where like this one doesn't change your jump, but it makes you sprint faster. So I'm guessing when you're talking about that with a katana, like there's different
Yeah,
options for.
yeah. There's like a lot of remarks like how they like how the dash, like the
Mhm,
momentum of a dash is carried over to a jump. So like a
mhm.
lot of them, like one of my friends really likes going around dashing and then double jumping because the momentum that you get from a dash is carried over to the jump. So you just have a really like a satisfying like double jump that can go farther because of that dash, for example.
Yeah. And one thing I also forgot to mention is that they do now have a system for tiering up cyberware. So you might get a level 2. Like the way all gear works in the game is that it's tier 1 through tier 5. There also is like half tiers, like tier 1 plus, tier 2 plus, tier 3 plus, which I forget if that was in the base game or not. Again, or maybe it was updated like in 1.3 or so. So if you find a piece of cyberware or whatever that you really like, what it does, like it is like a charge jump or whatever, but it's only a tier 2. You can spend crafting resources to upgrade it to higher tiers. You don't have to wait. Oh, I hope a higher tier 1 drops. No, you can just spend resources that you can earn in other manners to update it. I believe, I hope I get this right, that in the base game that was only true for iconic weapons, which are the unique ones. But now it's like you can do it on cyberware and other things as well. More generally, you have the ability to spend resources on tiering things up, which is kind of nice because you might just find a piece of gear or a piece of tech that you really like, and you don't want it to become like obsolete as you level up. Because the I believe how it works is the loot that you get is kind of relatively tiered to your level. Early on in the game, you're going to get tier 1 and tier 2. Then eventually, as you get to like level 10 or 20, you'll start getting tier 3 drops. And depending on which quest you do in which order, you might get something that's a low tier if you compared to if you had waited to do that quest when you were max level, which is kind of one of those things where I believe it was Skyrim that got a lot of kind of flack for like the um, we everything just scales to your level in terms of enemy abilities, and not only that, but the items you get. So it kind of feels like it doesn't matter what order you do things. There's that no risk reward of going to a high level area and doing something really well and being really skilled and getting a really high level drop. But they can kind of make up for that by saying like, okay, you got something at a low level, you can tier it up and still make use of it. It doesn't ever become obsolete totally.
Hmm.
I will say the game is running better for me now. I do have a different computer, but like a lot of the options before, like with the ray tracing, absolutely like they just completely like tanked my frame rate and seemed broken. It seems like it's running better now. Um, what else?
How
Oh, there
big?
is.
Do you know how big like the whole thing is? Like the Cyberpunk plus the Phantom Liberty? Like you know
I
exactly.
don't remember. I think it was 100 plus because I downloaded. I didn't have it installed anymore, so I downloaded it all again, and I'm pretty sure it was 100 plus, which I'm not
Okay.
surprised.
Yeah,
I do
I
remember.
think yeah, I think for people just a heads up, like I think it's like around 150 gigs, I want
Uh,
to say. So just prepare for that. If
Pretty
you
yeah.
massive. I
yeah.
heard there's like a lot of negative backlash for the console version. So you're
Well,
playing this on PC, right?
yeah, I'm playing it on PC. I have no idea like how console performance like Phantom Liberty. I believe it's PS5 only.
PS5,
I'm not
Xbox Series. Yeah, it's not for the previous gen, not for PS4, Xbox One.
right.
Oh,
So
PS Jam was a complete shit show from what I heard.
Yeah,
yeah, so yeah, but it makes sense to put that stuff. But yeah, I don't know anything about. I didn't look into the console performance on how update 2.0 plus Phantom Liberty, how that performs.
right. I will say though that first of all, there has been some backlash for Phantom Liberty, some that is genuine, and some that's just a little bit like people being, I think, stubborn, and maybe that's too accusatory. But because they overhauled like the perks and skills, some old builds can't work exactly as they were fashioned before. So if you were married to like a very, very specific like perk layout or build layout, it might not be as effective as it was anymore. And that's kind of par for the course for any game that has any sort of balance patch or update or something like that. But of course, there might be like specific details where like a certain perk didn't get translated to the new system at all, so now it's completely missing. I haven't dug in enough to see if there's any specific examples of that. There are still bugs, which is kind of like unfortunate with like oh, everything's fixed now. Not quite. One bug that I'm actually kind of finding disappointing in terms of like trying to make sure like our guides are up to date is that one neat thing about this game is that as you do, and this is kind of like the collector in me or whatever, is as you do side objectives or quests or whatever, you get these unique weapons, iconic weapons, and those can just be like really good for your kit for your character. But even if you're not planning to use it, you have like a stash in your apartment where you can put up the weapons, like and display them on the wall. And that's very typical for like games where you can have like a mannequin and display all the loot that you've gotten throughout the game or whatever. And then like that's been updated, of course. People notice all over the Reddit that there's new slots on the wall to stick up new gear from the expansion or even new gear that they slotted into the base game. But it's broken, apparently. People are like getting new gear and trying to put them up on the wall, and it just doesn't work.
Oh,
And you might say
okay.
like, well, that's cosmetic, like who cares? But it's also just kind of like uh just disappointing that one of the first things that people that like are loading up their old saves are excited to do doesn't work right. So it's
Yeah.
still Cyberpunk at the end of the day. So that's kind of how it goes.
I
Uh
mean, that's just the unfortunate reality of like I think CD Projekt Red just has a history of this stuff, right? Like nothing is really. They don't really ever have like a smooth launch, even for like Witcher 3 DLC. They weren't the smoothest launches.
yeah. So
So, hopefully, they once again get it fixed. What else can you say?
yeah, like yeah, it is kind of silly. Like within 1 or 2 days of Cyberpunk 2.0 launching, the Reddit's like, yeah, hopefully they hotfix that. And like, yeah, hopefully
Yeah,
they do.
yeah.
I will say though, even though I don't agree with Alex to like the extent that he loves these games, I do see why someone could. So there's a slight
Mhm.
difference there. And one thing that he described to me, that I do agree with it was true at the base game, and I do kind of see it now that I have it in the front of my mind, is Cyberpunk is probably one of like the best games where you sit down and talk to people. And I know
Mm.
that sounds very silly, but a lot of times, like trying to do like cinematics or cutscenes or even like just straight gameplay with a cinematic flair in a first person game, it feels janky or awkward or not natural because people have like the stare of death or the Bioware face. But
The Bioware face, yeah.
yeah, but in Cyberpunk, like people will talk while looking over their shoulder, while gesturing, while spitting on the ground. There is still a little bit like it's a first-person game. They will look at you as they're speaking to you most of the time, but there's like a lot of unique animations in terms of like characters leaning up against walls as they speak, or they'll be shuffling stuff on a desk as they talk, or you'll look over at them because you're riding in the car and chatting. And you can go into first person view and like actually have like the actual interior of the vehicle while the person's sitting next to you chatting with their arm out the window. I will say it feels terrible to drive a car in first person view because like your field of view is so narrow and it can't see out the windshield. But there's like so much detail and clutter like on the dashboard in terms of just like flavor that I do kind of appreciate, like the work that went into it. It's like I appreciate this, but this is impossible to drive, so I'm going to go back into third person. If you don't remember, Cyberpunk is first person entirely, except when you're driving a car, which
Have
is
you
how I prefer it.
have you tried like or see like the new like the car combat stuff, the updates that they did, and also just the updates to like the police system? Have you tried messing with that yet?
The car combat a little bit, because like even right away you can like fire a weapon while riding in the car, like in third person mode, etc. But there's a lot of new perks that are tied to car combat, which I
Hmm.
haven't really delved into yet because I'm putting my earliest perk points into like baseline stuff that I know I want, like
Yeah.
your RAM recharges faster, or your headshots when in stealth do more damage. But like once I have perks that I'm not sure like how they fit my like actual character build, I might go into and say like, oh, this perk gives me this new feature for a car combat that I would like. One thing, they also changed how cars are acquired. Now, most cars are acquired just from shopping on a website now, which seems like it's kind of bland. But before, and maybe I'm not far enough in my replay to see this yet. I remember as soon as you'd go into a new region of the city, a new fixer would contact you. And if your street cred was high enough, they would immediately just like bombard your phone and email with like, hey, I've got a new car for you. Hey, I've got a new car for you. Hey, I've got a new car for you. So it was kind of like this weird, like they wanted to make it immersive, but it's not quite when they call you 3 times back to back with 3 different cars. So now, at least from the outset of the game in like Act 1, which is pretty long if you do all the side stuff, you can just kind of go to your terminal and order them online at like a computer. And there's still some that I know that later you unlock with like quests and things. So maybe I'll have to follow up on that to see exactly how it's changed. I don't think it's been too overhauled. I think it's just been slightly tweaked. But I don't spend a lot. There's a lot of times, unless I'm going across the whole city, I'll just sprint and run rather than getting into a
Right, right.
car. But
Mhm. Yeah, that's
oh,
yeah.
as for
Really.
the police system, I'm too much of a goody two shoes. Like I don't do
Oh,
crime. So I see them walking around. They're clearly flagged. I think this is new. Before, one of the big like meme social media shares is that when you would deal crimes, like the cops would just immediately like apparate in front of you or behind you. Like they would just appear out of thin air, and it felt very phony. And of course, there's always going to be a little bit of that. But it's just how do you make it immersive? How do you disguise it?
mhm,
And they did not
right.
disguise it very well because cops would literally just like spawn on a balcony right next to you even if they had no way up. But now, as you're walking around the town, like cops, like they'll be just there out. They're just bumming about, and they have like a little marker above them saying, "This is a cop. Don't do crimes in front of them." So it's actually like, oh, so now if a bunch of cops appear after if I kill someone in cold blood, it kind of is a little bit more viable. Like, oh, okay, they're around. They'll show up. But okay, maybe I'll make a save, and before next week, I'll just go on a murder spree and see how it all works. And I do know it's something in the patch notes that they've addressed, but I just haven't experienced for myself quite yet. But yeah, that's Cyberpunk 2.0. Not a complete overhaul as it might have been like purported to be, but it is very, very cleaned up, and I do think it is in a better state now than it was at launch. Not just in terms of performance and bugs, of course that's obvious, but in terms of just feeling a little bit more rewarding and less aimless and less like a dead city.
Yeah, and
So
I believe there's also just like other changes to like the game, like outside like the edges of just like progression. Like for example, like I believe like they just reward you a lot more money now in the
yeah,
game.
yeah, I remember early on. I actually made a guide 3 years ago about how to make money because it was very stingy. But now, like, you just do a bunch of side quests with like either do the police scanner or the gig missions, and they just flood you with money. Almost to the point where I almost feel like money is no object anymore, which is it's not as bad, but I kind of want the money to be a gameplay mechanic in terms of like
Mm.
you can't just buy the best of everything every time you go to a shop. So I'm a
Oh,
little bit.
did they not adjust like shop prices to account for that?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I do know,
okay.
like, I was looking at some old guides, and I think, like, one of the guides said in order to like get the double jump or the charge jump, it cost $25,000. And then like I was looking at the shop and it cost me like $10,000. So like, oh, maybe they did make these like not only are they giving you more money, but the
They
prices
made
seem
them
like they've been
cheaper.
cheaper. So I
Huh.
hope like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you don't want it to be frustrating, but you also don't want it to just be like a non-mechanic where no,
Yeah, you
it's
just like figures power gaming now, pretty much.
yeah, and you don't even have to engage with the system anymore because you're just like, oh, I have enough money for everything and I never have to worry about it. But yeah,
Hmm, yeah,
so
okay.
Cyberpunk 2.0, that's my initial thoughts, and I'll hopefully report back next week with specific thoughts on the Phantom Liberty stuff once I get there. The next thing we have on the game list here before we go into the Tokyo Game Show and related news is Adam has played through a game in preparation for an upcoming RPG release. That when he told me he was playing this, I was like, "Wait, why?" Uh, so, Adam, what did you play this week?
So I'm the reviews editor at RPG Site. So I assign what games are being covered and who is reviewing them and whatnot. And so November is a pretty full month of RPGs. You got
Yep.
Star Ocean, you got Super Mario RPG, and one game that's coming out in the month that I feel like not a lot of people are super excited for, but it's one that I am curious about is one from I don't even know how you pronounce the studio's name exactly. Don't Nod? Is it Don't Nod? They're
I've
French.
always
So
said
however they do it.
Dontnod, but
Yeah.
didn't they change
They
their like how
changed
they?
their logo. It used to be all like sort of one word, but now it's literally two separate words. Don't Nod. So Don't Nod is the developer behind Life is Strange and Life is Strange 2. And this November they have an RPG coming out called Banishers Ghosts of New Eden. Now the premise to this game, as I recall it, is that you have these ghost hunters who are basically out there hunting ghosts and other creatures of, you know, magic, supernatural creatures of sorts. But the twist to the premise, if you will, is that play as a duo of characters, one who's alive and one who is a ghost themselves. And they're a couple, they're a pair. And so I really don't know much beyond the game except that, but I'm curious enough to give this game a shot. And like, I'll see if this game is any good. I'll review it. Hopefully it's good. Maybe it's not. I'm curious. I want to see. Now, this is very likely the same team behind another RPG that came out like 4 or 5 years ago called Vampyr. Now, Vampyr, it's spelled Vampyr.
I think it's like
Was
Vampyr is how they
I don't
announced it.
it's never said in the game. It's not like a diegetic thing in the game. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, obviously vampires are in the game, but not that spelled way. It doesn't mean anything. So I don't know how
It's
they
just fancy.
said it. Yeah, whatever. Now, this game came out like 4 or 5 years ago. It was basically Don't Nod's foray into RPGs, which if you read their like financial results, this is actually something they've been trying to like get more and more into recently. Vampyr sold 2 million copies, no slouch. And me being interested in playing Banishers, while it's not connected at all in terms of story or sequel or anything like that, it's very likely a similar team. So I'm like, you know what? Let me play Vampyr first and see what that's like, and see how this new game, Banishers, compares. Now, this game is an older game. I feel like it's not a super flashy game, so I won't spend too much time on this. But I was curious about it. Now, we reviewed this on the site back when it launched. Kyle did. He gave it a 6. Now, this game, it's very spotty. There are some components to it that are kind of unique and interesting, and some that are just downright terrible. Now, I'll start with the good. Vampyr, the premise
Can I
is that
start with the terrible? I want to start with one thing. This
oh,
is like this is
I
the most terrible
I know
box
where you're
art.
going. I know where you're going with. Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So I feel like this game could have sold 3 million if you told me that it sold 2, if it just had a better box art. And maybe that's
Yes,
superficial of me,
the
but like,
box art. No, I even put this out on my own Twitter. It is like in the running for the worst modern box art. I know you get some bad ones back in the retro days, but like in like the
our
last
good
10
friend
years,
Phalanx or whatever.
yeah, it
The one
is.
with the old man in the background.
Yeah.
Vampyr, like you're set. You're in Victorian era London, technically just past Victoria era London, with vampires, and this is the best you can do. Just
Okay,
like some dude like wiping blood off of his mouth. It's just like,
if it were up to you, what would you change the box art to?
okay, I would like show a little bit more of the city, like as the backdrop.
Hmm.
Like probably at twilight. Nighttime London has to be night because they're vampires,
Mm.
and have maybe the character model there, and he wears like a doctor's coat because he's a doctor. And I don't know, have it have him in some pose or something that's a little bit more artistic than just him like with his fist wiping blood off of his mouth. I don't know. What's sort of funny is that the box art, if you know nothing about this character, he looks like a bully or a thug when he's a nerd. He's a doctor. Like
It's like, can't
What?
nerds be
What?
bullies too?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Can't a nerd wipe this blood off his face?
now you're just being
I get what you mean
outrageous.
though. Like he almost
Oh,
looks
the
yeah.
like
way
he's
the
meant
way
to
he's
be.
posing, he looks like he's not meant to be like he's not really an imposing person. He's like so the premise of the game is that you're a surgeon, that you left London, I forget, I think you went to France to basically study medicine and became a surgeon, and he's on his way back, and he mysteriously began to turn into a vampire. At the beginning of the game, you don't know exactly what happened, and he's kind of like freaking out, like, oh my god, what's going on? I don't know. What is this? Is this my life, sort of thing? And he's like the opposite of like a bruiser that box art seems to imply. So yeah, the box art is awful. Anyways, the good. So this studio, they are behind the Life is Strange series. Um, this game has a lot of dialogue interactions with NPCs, and there's a whole mechanic to this where every NPC in London, there's maybe, I don't know, 40 NPCs in the game. They're marked in your chart, and let me try to say this as succinctly as possible. Each NPC has 4 to 6 like hidden attributes to them, and these are just, they can be anything, like secrets, like a relationship with another character, their profession, their likes, their dislikes, or whatever. And you learn about each attribute for the characters by talking to them. They might reveal an attribute on their own, or they might reveal an attribute of another character. Sometimes you'll find stuff in the world that you pick up that might reveal something about a character, or sometimes in the little mini quests that you do for the NPCs might reveal something about characters. Now, what this actually does, like what's the point of learning more about characters, is that the more you learn about a character, the more EXP they are worth when you bite them. So
I like that.
Actually, yeah, it's
it's
actually kind of
actually like
fun.
genuinely, yeah, it's actually like a genuinely interesting progression system in that you don't want to just bite all the NPCs you meet right away, because if you don't know anything about them for whatever reason, I don't know the logic behind this, you get less EXP. So there's kind of this goal when you're playing the game. Oh, okay, I want to talk to all the NPCs. I want to, pick up items in the world, little notes and whatnot that might explain more about them, and learn about the histories behind characters and things like that. And then once you learn everything there is to know about a character and you've done their little quests or whatnot, bite them for EXP.
It's just
Now,
like vampires in real life, okay?
now
Yeah, that's
this
how it
is
works.
actually
So if
it's
someone's nosy and asking about your life story, be wary.
now, like, you do get some EXP from fighting, but it's not much at all. And it actually, in a way, kind of reminds me of another vampire RPG, Vampire the Masquerade, in that Bloodlines, in that you get more EXP through dialogue and questing in a way than you do by fighting. And
In
so,
that game, I
like, in
don't think you
that
get any by
sense,
fighting.
right, yeah, but it's similar. You do get a little by fighting, but it's not much at all. I think by fighting enemies or whatnot, you might get like 10 or 15 EXP for fight, whereas biting a character, if they're fully like unlocked in terms of their attributes, you can get like 2,000. So it can be worth it. Now the thing is there is an achievement to go through the game without biting anyone, and of course I did that, and you're basically underleveled the whole time. But that's only a challenge run. So really, when you're playing this game like naturally, that's kind of the goal, is to learn more about characters, fulfill their quests, kind of unlock their attributes, and then you make the sort of moral decision whether or not to take their EXP or not. Besides like an achievement, which is, whatever, there's no reason not to. It's not like it might change the ending slightly, but it's just that's basically a part of the game. And I think that's genuinely kind of interesting and different, and you don't really see that. So that's probably the highlight of the game, is this sort of NPC interaction, the little quests that they do. Sometimes these quests are, going to a certain area of town and fighting a couple of enemies, or sometimes they're literally just dialogue-based quests, talking to certain characters in certain orders or learning more about them, finding an item or whatnot. That's the best part about the game. Probably the most mediocre part of the game is the combat, which I don't know if this is cynical of me, but it's not super surprising that a studio that previously made Life is Strange, when they introduce combat to the game, it's not great. This is maybe their first go at sort of RPG, action RPG combat
Is
system.
it just like really stiff, or
Yeah, it's I don't know how you explain it. It's just it's like a Souls-like game, only very
bad?
uh
Mid.
junky. Now, Souls like, I know my people might have groaned at that. There is this sort of weird bonfire like mechanic where whenever you sleep in your bed, all the enemies around the world respawn. And
Just like
so
real life.
Yep.
yeah, there's that sort of refresh where it's like you can go and heal now at your bed, but it's going to respawn all the enemies. Um Sort of thing. There's no like loot your body or whatnot. If you die, you just respawn somewhere else. Um, Anyways, the worst part about the game, by far, like easily, are the boss fights. The boss fights are terrible. It commits some of the most cardinal like boss fight design sins, in my opinion.
Mm.
One, just having a boss basically be a normal enemy with more health. It's just kind of like, that's not interesting. It's
Oh
like, oh,
yeah.
it's a flamethrower dude. They're in the game, but now it's just a bigger one.
He's a flamethrower dude with a helmet.
Yeah, pretty much. And almost every single boss in the game does the I'm going to summon my underlings to annoy you phase.
Oh,
And I hate that. It feels like they don't know how to design a boss. So they're like, well, let's just take the sort of the combat system we already have in place and like just here's 4 enemies that are now bothering you in our normal combat, like you just got to take care of them while the boss is pestering you from afar or whatever.
Well, that's the thing you're looking out for in Banishers, then, to see what
Yes,
the bosses
yes.
are like.
Yeah. And so there's just almost every single boss is like that. It's just bad. And then I was actually reading Kyle's review of this. He kind of said the same thing. The bosses are bad. The combat is not great. Dialogue is the best part. I know there's also some consternation about like the moral dilemma between do you want to bite people or not is a little bit loose. I think it's fine. It's whatever. It's not like super thought provoking or what have you. It's just, the game does sort of track how many people you've bitten or not. So if you want to be a vampire virgin, you can not bite anyone. And I did that. But you do
only
kind
did
of
it
play
because
through the game underleveled.
if there wasn't an
You
achievement for
do
it,
get a different ending, so there is an in-game thing for it too.
Oh, okay. I actually
Now,
like that rather than just some like
in
Steam
terms
UI
of
thing.
story, the story itself is also a little bit awkward. It's not awful, but long story short, there's a plague going around in London kind of at the same time that this sort of like vampire plague is going around. And you're basically wondering like, how are these connected? So it's sort of a mystery between these two things. And you're a doctor, so it's sort of like in your wheelhouse, your character.
And you're a
And then your
vampire.
character, yeah, exactly. But then I feel like the game it backloads a lot of the reveals and actual narrative. Some of it, actually quite a lot of it, even after the final boss. You beat the final boss, and there's like an epilogue chapter that basically, not completely, but it's sort of like, all right, here's the explanation for everything, and it just kind of feels like you maybe could have spread this out over the course of the game more. Because you spend, 80% of the game kind of in this mystery of like what's going on, or like false leads or what have you. And then at the end, it's like, here's the answer, here's what's going on. And I kind of feel like the pacing is a little bit weird. The game isn't too long, which is actually one reason why I played it. It's only about, I did everything you possibly could in about 25 hours. So that's pretty short for an RPG. And like I said, some good points, some bad points. I would not say it's a great game. If you're just curious like me and don't mind playing a game that's iffy, go for it. I think it's got some, there's some value there, but definitely know the sorts of things I want to look forward to in Banishers. I kind of feel like Banishers in a way might be more traditional, but it's hard to say. Like I haven't really dived deep into the pre-release stuff, like the mechanics or whatnot, because if I'm gonna play it, I'll see it. I highly doubt it's gonna have a similar, talk to NPCs sort of, slant to it, but that's fine. So I'm
But it
curious
might
about
have
it.
similar boss fights.
Yeah, I I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast when they had like a gameplay trailer for it. Some of the character models and animations feel like they're from last gen or something, which I get it. It's a lower budget game from a smaller studio. You can't expect it to look like AAA, but it does it's a little bit distracting. Like, oh, okay, the faces of the characters are kind of stone. One thing I forgot to mention, I feel like Vampire actually had some really good voice performances. I'm not exactly sure who did the localization or it's a French studio, English dubbing, but it was pretty good. There were some characters I thought were really well done. So I'll see how Banishers stacks up to that. I feel
And when
like
does that launch? Like
most
late November?
mid-November. I think it's just like right around Star Ocean. I feel like for our audience, more people are going to be way more interested in Star Ocean or Super Mario RPG or whatever else is releasing that month. But I'm like, you know what? I'll take a look at this Eurojank RPG. I will take it. I will see. I'm
Well,
genuinely
we have
curious.
to throw
Damn,
curveballs every once in a while.
Eurojank?
Oh,
Hey,
hold
we
on,
only
hold
say
on.
When we say Eurojank, we mean it affectionately.
I'm just saying that look, Adam is more prepared than us when they craft a Don't Nod RPG cinematic universe and have Banishers and Vampyr crossover and
Yeah.
whatever else, for their end game or whatever Infinity War title.
Yep.
Get excited.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think I touched on pretty much the main components of it.
Well, thank you, Adam, for going through Vampire with us. Like I said, every once in a while we get to throw a curveball in what we talk about. And speaking of curveballs, we are going to once again have Chow take the podium and
You're gonna
teach
take us
us.
back 30 years.
Is
Okay,
I don't
this
think it's
game
quite
is
30 years. Hey,
okay. This game is 23 years old. Okay, this is Korean jank. This is Arcturus, the Curse and Lost Divinity.
All right, Chow,
Uh,
teach us about Arcturus, the Curse, and Lost Divinity.
Okay.
What did this release on, Zhao?
PC only.
Okay.
This is made by Gravity. Do you know Gravity?
That's a game. Is that
That's a fundamental
related?
force.
Is that related to Ragnarok Online at all?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then
It is the
yes, I know
same
Gravity.
studio that made Ragnarok Online.
Got
This
it.
is their first game that they made. It was like a big budget RPG. It is known as the Xenogears of Korea. This game is
The Xenogears
big.
of Korea. Holy shit! All right.
It is. I do feel that kind
Is
of
that the
way.
podcast title? The Xenogears of Korea.
we have some really good podcast title candidates already. So we
But
don't know.
But yeah, this game's also localized in Japanese by Falcom, and Kondo even stated that he took a lot of inspiration from this game to Trails in the Sky. So, how do I even say
Is that
about
why
this
you
game?
played it?
That's actually the first guide I ever wrote.
Oh, okay.
The reason why I'm playing it is because I'm trying to get some inspiration and ideas again by looking at the first guide I wrote. Because my first guide was very terrible, but I try to beat this game because the game's very interesting.
Oh, that's like your training arc almost. It's like to find the path forward, you need to go back to your roots.
Sort of.
Okay. All
That's
right.
why I went back playing it. It is a very difficult game in my opinion, but it is.
So
I
what's
think
it
it's a great
like?
game.
I've never
Okay, so this
never
game
heard of
plays
this
like
game.
Grandia. It plays like Grandia. If
Okay.
you get what
The
I'm saying.
first one?
Yes, the battle system is just like Grandia, but the magic system is very different, right? But like the battle system is like there's some characters that can use magic, but the rest of the characters are just physical characters. I think there's only 2 characters that can use magic, right? And like the skill system has like 3 was it 3 different like MP gauges, if you get what I'm saying. Like if you're the magic user, they have fire, wind, and something else. I'm trying
So
to
they have
remember
so they have different MP gauges for the to represent the elements.
Yeah, like, and to use the abilities, it consumes like a certain amount, and all the characters has barrier points.
Okay.
So basically, your HP is they had to break your barrier in order to damage your HP, right? That's how all the characters work in this game, right?
Okay.
And bosses also follow the same mechanics. So some bosses like they have a huge HP like barrier, but their HP is very small. And there's this one character that you can use. He has a special ability where he does this backflip and he just hits the guy's HP directly without going through the barrier. If you get what I'm saying.
Fucked up.
But
Cheating.
yeah, that sounds just like that character in my opinion. But yeah, this game just plays like Grandia, and I think what makes this game really hard for me is like it's very easy to get lost in this game because
Okay.
like Grandia's, it's also kind of easy to get lost because of how the graphics are, right?
Okay, just in case some people aren't as old as us and don't know what Grandia plays like.
Just in
Uh,
case.
So it's turn-based, but the characters are moving around on like a battlefield, like in real positions. And
Yes.
you basically, when you move a character, a timeline like is sort of is basically displayed, showing when the next character's turn to act is, something like that.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
But the reason why I'm saying like exploration is just like Grandia, but what makes this game really hard to explore is like, okay, when you're navigating through the map, and if the graphics are not really that good back in those days, it's very easy to think, oh, this place looks just like that place, right? And
It's like one of the quality of life features they added in the recent Saga re-release where like there's like pointers on like the places you can interact with the background. Like, hey, you can exit out through here in the background, and then they'll have a pointer there that like notify the player because sometimes it kind of blended into the background and like it wouldn't register that you could go there.
yeah, I would say so. But like, I think what makes it very difficult is that when you open a treasure chest in most video games, right? The treasure chest is left open, right? So you'd be like, oh yeah, I opened that treasure chest, so I know I've been there before, right? But in this game, the treasure chest closes when you open it, so you don't know if you open it or not. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay, that's
Unless
fucked
you
up
follow
actually.
Chow's guide.
Yeah, I imagine there's like no way to actually like there's no tracker for that or anything.
No tracker. It's very easy to get lost in this game. I
Wow.
think the only useful thing is the compass in this game, which tells you where your destination is, or maybe if you want to look for the inn, and that compass will kind of point you to that direction. But other than that, it's very confusing to find out where you are in this game.
So what's kind of like the setup for this game? What are you dealing with?
Okay, so this this game has you play as two different characters to start off. Okay, so one side you play as this character called Sis, and the other character is Eluard. So I will start with Sis first. Basically, he's a shopkeeper that is from the countryside. Okay, he looks like a girl. This is very important because he seems to get bullied a lot because he looks very feminine. He is even more beautiful than than a local beauty. That's kind of like his thing, right? But anyways, he's a very timid boy. He's trying to like be nice, and his dad's a fucking alcoholic. He used to be like a grand hero at one time, but after his wife died, he basically became an alcoholic and just kind of like abuses his son all day, right? And I think one day is like his childhood friend comes in and said that, hey, let's go to the city side. And childhood friend is Maria. And she's basically telling him, is like, hey, this place sucks and your dad's a drunk, so why the hell would you stay here? Right? And eventually she was and eventually she was like, what was it? Basically, the church came in and said they want to buy the land that the main character's shops owns or something like that. And the reason why he doesn't want to move because their mom's grave is there. And the dad's like, yeah, you can take the land. I don't give a fuck. It's like you can take the money. It's like, and so the main character finally got fed up with his drunk dad, and they decided to move to the countryside, or get out of the countryside and go to the city. And the girl's point of view is that the girl has no plans on what to do in the city. She just wants to get out. But the thing is, she's also thinking, you know what? Since I have no plans, I'm just gonna betray the main character, sell off his goods, and use the money and make it big in the city. She is a very scum as well.
Wait, is this Maria?
Yes. The characters in this game has very extreme personalities. I'm guessing she's more like an opportunist. Because, before she, even went to the city, she basically told the main character, bring that legendary weapon with you. Because, you might need it. Because the main character does have a legendary weapon in his household, which is this knife from this hero. And basically she told him to bring it with him, because in case if anything goes wrong, I would just tell him to pawn it off and take off that money and make it big in the city or something like that, right? Obviously,
is this a fantasy environment, or is it more like medieval?
It's like a medieval, I say.
Well, I guess you said there's magic, so fantasy. Okay.
Yeah, but anyways, what happened was, they kind of got this infamous reputation, right? So people thought they were these two thieves that's been stealing around in the city, so they got taken for mistaken identity by these royal knights, and one of the royal knights tried to sexually harass the main character, sexual lap. He used time stop magic on him, but it didn't work for some reason. And the main character was able to use that opportunity to kill him while this guy's trying to sexually assault him. And I guess this traumatized the main character because he killed somebody. And then they run away, and then somebody saved them, and this guy teaches them magic. But before he teaches them about the magic, he tells them that there's some very valuable stones across the continent that could turn you into a god, which is called Dillions.
This has gone places in a roller coaster.
So he tells them
the trauma by killing someone to, hey kid, you can become a god with these stones.
And
cool.
And the girl's point of view is maybe I should just collect these stones and sell them and become a multimillionaire. That's her
so
goals.
This seems to be her very clearly defining character trait.
Character personality is very extreme. So anyways, and then they go to the next destination, and Sis gets kidnapped by some big huge dude, and that's the end of his part, right? So you play the other guy, which is this rich dude. He's this narcissist superhero wannabe. That's kind of how I would describe him. He looks like Alucard, but his name's not Alucard. His name's Aluard.
Okay.
But anyways, he's this he's a noble. What did I say? He's a noble. He's the prime minister's nephew, and basically the prime minister tells him that he needs him to find the same stones that I was talking about earlier, the Dillions, because apparently they have huge control, and I think the reason why the Prime Minister wants him to find it is because he's being under control by these 6 wise men, which looks like this Illuminati group. And he believes that if he can collect the stone, he can kind of break free from the system that he was locked in. And like, I guess in this part, the game gets really sci-fi because you see that these 6 wise men are talking like to the supercomputer, saying what the course of humanity should do. You know,
I thought this was fantasy.
Okay.
that's what you thought.
All
Because
So
right.
this is Star Ocean 2, I think.
well, when the end game gets around, you'll find out that it takes place in Earth. You know, it's like very far in the future in Earth or something like that.
Oh, so someone washes up on a beach and sees the Statue of Liberty, something like that.
Well, I think
No,
how it
it's
goes
like
like
Harvestella, where you go under the ocean and see the American flag.
Okay.
Okay.
But I think in the
Yeah.
end game is like you find out like I think the Dillians is a body part of an angel. I think it is. That's how I remember it. It's like I think how it goes is that humanity committed a sin and God decided to invade Earth and try to kill them all. And humans
So this is
basically
fantasy and sci-fi and like biblical Ragnarok of some sort.
and
Dude, we have gone places with this game.
so basically this is like big spoiler end game, but basically humans basically killed one of the angels and basically by throwing nuclear weapons at it. But they said they
Oh.
couldn't really fight the angels at this rate because at the rate of using nuclear weapons, it could kill us all before we could even destroy the angels or whatever, right? So, anyways, the big spoilers: those parts are made from angels. Okay, these treasures that we're looking for, and it has like superpowers from it. But anyways, he's trying to find these treasures, and I think his plot is more like about his brother being jealous of his success. So he stages like this mansion, his own mansion on fire, and so he has to like rescue like one of the maids from there. And turns out the maid's his sister, and they were having like this incest relationship. It's really fucked up.
I'm wondering at what point do we just like cut Chow off and be like, all right, that's enough.
But then it gets crazier.
This game is crazy. It has like nudity. It has like one of the scenes, like one of the characters get literally like I don't know. It's like you find her fucking naked.
Okay,
and she's like
okay.
and she's like in this
Chow,
monster test tube.
is this game good?
It is very good in the first half. Before the time skip,
Okay,
there is a time skip.
and then it gets very bad in the second half.
Yeah, it's more like it's how do I say it? The gameplay gets very unbalanced. Like this game is like a sandbox RPG. Like once every character starts to meet up, they all trying to find this Dillians. The game kind of becomes like a sandbox, like a saga game, right? You can go this way, you go that way. It's like you're free to explore wherever you like, right? But this also can lead you to getting stuck in like some dungeons very early. Like the game can throw you like this low 50 dungeon right at the beginning of the game, but you decided to explore there anyways, and then it's like, oh shit, I'm locked out of my progress. I can't get out of this fucking cave. It's so difficult, right? But I think the game's also designed that you could abuse the jank and exploit to kill all the bosses in this game, even at a low level run. I think you can actually like speedrun how this game works.
So it's like poorly balanced, but you can use that in your favor sometimes.
Yes, like for example, the main character can use magic like Sizz. He has Fire Pillar. Do you remember Fire Pillar from Ragnarok Online?
Yes. I
Yes.
do. It's a really
There's
good
that
spell.
exact same skill. You imagine the skill. The whole tactic is you attack a boss, get them stuck in the corner, use Fire Pillar, and the Fire Pillar will keep burning them while they're being stuck in the corner, and the fire will burn them to death. If you get what I'm saying. Like, that's one way you can, like, beat up all boss fights. In fact, Fire Pillar is, I think, it's the only way you can kill the last boss in this game.
Nice. Good.
But yeah, it's very poorly balanced. But I would say, like, I think the game, if there is an English patch for this game, but like I said, it's very buggy. Like, I'm not sure it came from the English patch or the game was just that buggy, right?
Is that what
but-
you were playing it with, or were you just playing
I
it?
am playing it that. If you
Okay.
understand Korean, I heard there's a Korean mod that fixes even all the Korean problems that when the game originally launched. But like how the story goes from like Iliard eventually has to meet Sizz and they team up and they find out there's this big guy who looks like a hobo, but he has a very awesome past. This guy is actually the Emperor. And how it goes, it's really fucked up. Like there's was it the Emperor guy? Basically they have their two politician party that was fighting And because he sided the side that lost, they basically killed off his entire family. And at the end, when those people in the top all died, they basically forced this guy to become the emperor, right?
I
And
can I can see how Falcom could potentially have taken inspiration from all this because it just touches everything, and they're just like, oh, we'll just dip our toes in what we want,
well,
and
the thing
yeah.
is, like in this game, if you interact with NPCs, they all speak their different dialogue, and they all have their own micro story. Like one of them is like you can read this
Just like
diary.
Vampire.
It just seems like this game, like if you were to combine all the Trails games together into one game, it would somewhat be
It's just
similar to this game. So what
definitely
Falcom did
feels
was
like a kitchen sink
pick
game.
apart, it picked apart parts of this game to separate it to their own stories.
Like,
So Falcom's working on a remake on this game by the end of Trails. That's the real answer.
I think this game did more than what Trails did in 7 games in one. I would say.
Is that a
I would.
good or a bad thing?
That's not necessarily a good thing. More is not always better.
I mean, from a value proposition to the player, they're winning. They're winning because they get 7 games worth of value into the one
I
product. So
mean, how it goes, like, this game has 5 chapters, okay? But the first chapter is extremely long. Like, the first chapter is probably, like, 60% of the game. And then the rest of it is, like, shorter. But, as soon as you beat the first chapter, there's a time skip. It's like Xenogears, like, this one. This one's, like, it feels complete, and this 2 is just, like, whatever, right? If you get what I'm saying.
Okay. So this is why you're saying this is the Xenogears of Korea. Got
But
it.
no, but this game has a good reputation in Korea. People actually, like,
Xenogears has good reputation.
like I'm saying, people want a remake of this game, like for
People want to
forever.
remake Xenogears.
Well, true.
So it is the Xenogears of Korea. Fuck, you're right.
Yeah, it has a very complete first arc, and then the second half is like very rushed, janked.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
like it's just like
All right.
whatever, man.
Okay. I'm sold on your comparison. Then you know what? It's basically the same game.
It's like, and it gets all fucking weird with all this angels and
Mhm.
sci-fi and all this crap later on, and you're like, holy shit, what the fuck am I reading here? It's like. But anyways, I just want to say one thing about the Emperor guy.
Mhm.
Every girl that falls in love with this guy all dies.
Hmm.
He is
I mean,
literally tragic galore. So, anyways,
I don't
it
know if
is
I
a great
expected anything
game.
else.
It is a great game. I do think that the time skip, it kind of has little problems with all the characters' personality being flipped. Like, if people was timid back in there, let's say Sis is very timid, while the time skip Sis is a fucking asshole. And then Maria, she's being a gold digger, humbleistic person, opportunist person. She
Humbleistic.
becomes okay. She became mellow out. She's a lot nicer in this time skip. Uh, I forgot to mention that her goals change from collecting these treasures to marrying Iliard because she finds out Iliard is super rich. So she's like, I gotta hook up with this dude. But Iliard just treats her like garbage. I think in the storyline, Iliard is like, he's a narcissist in this game, right? And in the time skip, Iliard lost half of his face because he's actually a very good looking guy. And in the time skip, half of his face got chipped off by a rock. And he's like, and I think he blames Maria for all his problems. Like, thanks to fucking saving you, I lost half my face. Get the out of my sight, you bitch. That's like one of the lines that he does. Like the characters are very extreme in this game. I'm not sure if people can like their personalities in this game because it's not like your traditional Japanese and American kind of type stories because characters just have very extreme personalities. So,
Well, thank
anyways,
you, Chow, for teeing us up on the Korean Xenogears, the Xenogears of Korea, Arcturus, The Curse, and Lost Divinity. It does have an English fan patch. Looks like that patch has a few bugs, but Google around, it looks like people have figured out ways to deal with those if you want to play through this game.
Yeah, sounds like a video game that does exist.
I highly recommend someone can give it a try if they're willing to put up with Korean jank. And I also got one last detail to mention. Some of the maps that they didn't use in this game, they recycled
I thought
it
the
in Ragnarok.
Emperor was the being a tragic figure was the last detail.
I
All
forgot
right,
to
one
mention
more,
that.
Chow. One more.
I forgot to
Is it-
mention that some of the maps that they didn't get to use in this game was recycled into Ragnarok Online.
Joy.
And then I also heard one last thing is that this game, when it's sold in Korea, one of the artists plagiarized somebody's some art from the Guilty Gear artist and put it in there, and they sold the copies that way. And when they found that out, they had to pull the copies from the retail store. And I don't know if that ruined the sales from it, but that's what happened with the history of this game. And then I think
There
the
is no
game.
and then. That's it. We're done. we have news to talk about, Chow. We have Tokyo Game Show.
Okay, fine.
Child's like, I don't give
No.
a fuck. That's current games and future games. If they're not at least 30 years old.
No, obviously, like I do appreciate getting a chance to talk about Arcturus, because whenever Chow puts a game on the list here, I have no idea what to expect, and it seems like that's going to continue because I don't know how you plan for what we just witnessed in terms of what this game contains. But thank you, Chow, genuinely. So before we go into the announcements and the new details from Tokyo Game Show proper, one of the things that we stated last week that we were looking forward to was a planned live stream from RGG Studio for the upcoming 2 Yakuza games, or I should say Like a Dragon games, Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. So, and Adam, remind me, like, there was a Japanese stream and then like the English facing RGG Like a Dragon Direct, which were kind of branded differently but contained like similar information. So, the most of the information in the last week more dives around Infinite Wealth, though I do believe like for Like a Dragon Gaiden, we got like the opening movie for that game, which is just Kiryu. Again, that game takes place between Yakuza 6 and Yakuza 7, or Yakuza 6 and Yakuza Like a Dragon, I guess. This game is a mess in terms of titles and trying to keep it straight.
Yeah.
But so we got the opening movie for Like a Dragon Gaiden, but more like topically, we did get the release date and a lot more details and footage and gameplay and story for Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. To head it off, we'll say that Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth will launch January 26th, 2024, which to me is way earlier than I expected, because that's, just a little over 2 months after Like a Dragon Gaiden, which is a like a side quill game. But I was expecting this to be like a summer release next year or something like that.
Well, they
If not
always
even-
said early, like even
They
before they
did?
gave a date, they
Okay.
were like comes out early 2024. So I
Okay,
figured
maybe
Q1 somewhere.
maybe I
Yeah,
forgot
but we did it. But the early 2024. It's like usually we don't really expect it in the first month because usually January is a quiet month traditionally. But yeah, it's late January is definitely not far off from Gaiden, and also it is just mere days away from like stuff like Grand Blue Relink and Persona 3 Reload as well. So which is kind of Sega has a weird strategy, right? Because there's like Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is gonna be a gigantic RPG. Persona 3 Reload is also a gigantic RPG, and they're just releasing these fairly close to each other, which is kind of surprises me a little. You would think they'd want to let those two marinate a bit more instead of releasing them just within days of each other. It's interesting strategy, and I assume there's some fan base overlap or audience overlap because the like a Dragon found so many new like a new install base with Yakuza Like a Dragon on the shift to RPG. Like that was a lot of people's first Yakuza game, and they really dug the shift to RPG. And I imagine a good chunk of that install base do enjoy stuff like Persona because of the turn-based nature of the combat.
It is a bit strange because I still think of we covered Yakuza games even before Like a Dragon, because they had they weren't RPGs, but they had some of the same like flavor. And now when you say like Sega releasing 2 RPGs so close to each other, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that's the case now, huh? Alongside the announcement of the date, we got 2 pretty long trailers for this game, one that's focused on story and one that's focused on gameplay. And then of course, alongside all of this with Tokyo Game Show, they have stage shows and like live streams and things like that, and I might not been able to get all that parsed through. For the gameplay, one of the things that I think is really like just kind of genius is apparently Kiryu, when he's in the party, has an ability to like break out of the turn base and just go into brawler mode. He's just like,
It's really good.
The story trailer in itself is like 10 minutes long, and it kind of goes all over the place. Like, it's hard to tell what events happen in what order. It like goes like up and down the gamut of emotions. Like, here's the premise, here's some really serious stuff, here's some really silly stuff. Obviously, parts of it focus on Ichiban, parts of it focus on Kiryu, new characters. Then there's a part about halfway through all the story trailer where it literally says, like, I guess we're getting the party back together, and it shows pretty much the whole cast from Like a Dragon. Uh, and at what point does that happen in the story? One thing that I know that people have highlighted is that as a pretty clear plot point, and this is not a spoiler because it seems to be very clearly integrated into the premise of this game, is that Kiryu is sick. He has cancer, and he's like contemplating retirement, but he says that's not in his nature. So what is he going to do? And that seems to be a very dramatic part of
Yeah,
the story
the
here.
collective, the everyone collectively melted down during the trailer when they're showing in the live stream. Like, just Kiryu turning back the image. It's like, he's like, thing is, I've got cancer. Everyone's like, what? Excuse me?
Yeah.
What the fuck
Yeah.
did he just say?
So maybe he'll
So,
post that screenshot. I don't know.
yeah.
Do you think they're gonna kill him off, or is it gonna be another fake out?
I mean, I assume this is kind of, they're actually trying to, like, trying to pass the torch to Ichiban, like, genuinely. They're trying to let go of Kiryu. I don't know how they're gonna, like, how they're gonna on what method they're gonna do it. They're just gonna, like, really kill him off with cancer. Who knows? That, it's, we'll see. I mean, we'll see how they do it. And it's not even just like returning characters from Like a Dragon. You have returning characters from, like, almost the entire series. You see, like, Daigo there, and you see kind of sort of like what's I'm forgetting the name of the eye patch dude. The
Majin?
one,
Majima.
Majima, yeah.
Well, I
Just
mean, of
like
course
on
he's
his name.
around. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So, but yeah, it's just like but everyone's like old, dude. Like, you see, even Majima is just like, yeah, you're old as fuck here. Like, yeah.
you're getting
Well,
old.
yeah, but it's a really wild, trailer that just goes up and down. It kind of establishes, like, the basic premise, and, like, if this is like what they're establishing as the premise, like, who knows where
Oh,
this goes?
I
Because,
forgot to say one part of this.
yeah,
Apparently, one nugget of the story has to deal with this VTuber named Tatara Hiroshima or something like that. Let me see if I can find it. Tatara, that's what they call her, Tatara. And, like, apparently she is the one that gives away that Yakuza, Tatara Hisuka, gives away that Kiryu is still alive. And it's just like, okay, that's a way to, like, integrate that into your story. So
yeah.
maybe we'll figure out who in real life is the VTuber, because there's a
Uh-oh,
female
that's
characters that it
forbidden
could be.
knowledge.
Yeah, but
For some people,
well,
that's
no,
forbidden knowledge.
well, I meant like in the premise of the game, like you might
I
meet a
know, I
character who you
know.
then, yeah, but that the Korean boss lady with pink hair, Sujin,
Sung Lee.
Song, is in the game and seems like she has a major role. She was one of the characters where I didn't really like how she was incorporated in Like a Dragon, because she's initially framed as an antagonist until you get like an uneasy alliance with her, and you learn that
Mhm.
you learn a few things about her. I guess I won't spoil it, but like, even like her boss battle with her, she like takes a back seat and just sends her goons at you. It just felt like this weird, like, interesting thing, like, oh, I guess we can't fight her for some reason, but she's back, so if she can kind of have like a big role in this story too, I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, she announced she's a playable character now, so she's joining the party in this one, which is,
Oh,
I
sweet.
really like Sung Lee. So,
Yeah, this game
that,
might have a pretty large playable cast, because it looks like
yeah,
all the old characters are returning, and there's like 3 or 4 new ones. So
yeah, they announced, Adachi, Saeko, Jungi,
mhm,
Zhao are still coming back, and then there's some newcomers. Obviously, Kiryu's joining the party.
mhm,
Then, yeah, you have new characters, Tomizawa and Chitose. They were introduced in the story trailer. We
mhm.
don't know too much about them, which is fine, and they'll be joining the party. So, yeah, it's, and as we go over to the gameplay as well, like, as you imagine, like, this will have the job system from the original game, but, with all new classes. Like, they showed off, like, samurai, desperado, geo dancer, pyro dancer, housekeeper, and all that stuff. And, it's really, they're really learning a lot of, like, lessons that like Yakuza Like a Dragon was their kind of first go at their RPG transition for the Yakuza series. And
Mhm.
now, based on feedback that they got and how that game, played, it was a great ride. It was nice seeing, and it was a nice introduction to Ichiban and all those characters and how that story developed. I think the pain points of it, kind of the weaknesses of Yakuza Like a Dragon, were kind of intrinsically its RPG systems, where it wasn't as smooth as it could be, and now they're really it's very noticeable that they're making a concentrated effort to improve upon and enhance upon those systems to really make this as good as it can be. Like, one of the immediate things that you notice off the bat with this combat system is now you can manually move in a certain radius when it's your turn in battle. Unlike in Yakuza Like a
Instead
Dragon,
of
where you
just
had
where they
no.
just kind of like waddle and
Yeah,
wander.
they kind of wander. Yeah, so like whenever you whenever your character is attacked with an environmental object in Yakuza Like a Dragon, it was like a mere coincidence. That was something you had no control over. It was just they just decided to wander over there. While this one, you can actually go over to like an environmental object that's within your radius, and hey, you want to attack them there, then that you have more control over that. And like you mentioned earlier, like there are some character specific things that like the way that they interact with the system, like Kiryu can get out of turn based and go into brawler mode briefly to interact with that, which is really cool. Kind of bringing back the spirit of older Yakuza games into this game, because it controlling Kiryu as a turn based character can be a bit weird. So ways to kind of make it more dynamic is cool in that aspect. And then they just showed a ton, and of course, we're far away from Kamurocho. The main stage here is Hawaii. That is the big
Mhm.
shakeup here is location, right? And we're not in Kamurocho. We're not in what was the other city that was like the main one for
Jinko, Yokohama,
yes, yeah,
and
yeah,
then Sotenbori. I forget what region it's in. Are the
yeah.
big three that I think of. There's of course others throughout the series, but those are the big three.
Yeah. So this one's is the very tropical focus. They do
Mhm.
have like a dynamic real time weather system now, and they showed off just everything you remembered about Yakuza Like a Dragon in terms of systems, plus times 10, I guess, and it's even more crazy. The mini games, of course. They have like a sort of crazy taxi equivalent with a almost like a crazy you do food delivery on a bike, delivering pizza and burgers to Americans, and it's like, yes, this is exactly
That's totally what
what
we
what
do.
and then joining the Segway Club from Cloud from last week in FF7 Rebirth. Ichiban also rides a Segway. I guess that's
Yep.
such a trendy thing to
Year of
do
the
now in
Segway.
RPGs. Yeah. So that's an interesting coincidence that they both came up upon. um, what did you think? What did you think, Brian? Because you played these Yakuza games. You're finally caught up with me. Like, I want to hear like sort of what were your thoughts on when you saw the gameplay reveal?
For me, I've more recently played the Judgment games, so it's been a
Mhm.
while since Like a Dragon, and I think I kind of want to read a plot synopsis just to try to remember like where things were left off. Because one of the key premises of the story trailer is Shirasawa, I believe is his name, who was like an antagonist, at least a minor antagonist in the first game before you learn about Arasawa, the younger one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then like in this premise of this game, like he is the one that is sending Ichiban to Hawaii. And I'm trying to think, wait, like how did they leave off with each other last time? Were they allies? Were they uneasy allies? Or things like that? And so I kind of want to just read a story synopsis just to kind of remember where I was. Um, but I think all Yakuza games are kind of like that. In terms of the turn-based, when you're talking about the combat system of the first game, for whatever reason, the thing that paints my mind's eye is when you control a character and they just like randomly waddle back and forth.
Yeah.
Um, if there's like a railing next to like their where they're standing, they'll like randomly like climb over it and back over it and back over it. Like if you're near the side of the road and there's like a little railing, like a
Right.
character will like they'll like it's smart that they have like I mean that probably is pretty difficult to program. Like if this character gets too close to this object, then they'll animate and climb over it. But then they'll waddle back the other direction and climb back over it back again
Yeah,
and
in
again.
practice, like through the execution, it just looks stupid.
Yeah, really, really goofy. So even though it's a hard thing to show off in trailers, I think like how does this game improve as now it's an RPG series. It's to kind of clean up things like that, try to make it not feel kind of as the first game kind of felt loose, sloppy, messy kind of in a way where it like incorporates these really like interesting, good ideas, but it just doesn't feel polished. Where here
Mhm.
is their opportunity to be like, oh, now this really feels like I have control over what I'm doing and not subject to RNG. And things like that. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. But that's kind of hard to sell in trailers. Trailers, of course, what both these trailers mostly focuses on are all the characters. You know, that's always a big hit in terms of like who's returning, who's new. Um, and the gameplay trailer, a good chunk of it is mini games. Like you'll see, like you said, like the food delivery. Of course, there's karaoke. There's all sorts of other ones. There's ones with like pole dancers, so some sort of substitute for like the
There's
capoeira clubs
like
of
a
some
dating
sort.
app. Like you could like
Mhm.
you kind of there's like a almost like QTE dating app aspect
Yeah.
of Ichiban like responding to like text messages and like trying to get on dates. It's all and I don't know if you saw this Chow like if you watch his trailer, but you know Gachapin from Granblue like when they do the
Yeah,
free
I saw
retros.
them there.
Yeah.
I talked to my guildmates and we're like, "What the hell is Gachapin doing there?"
It's like so like fucking weird ass cameos like that. It's just it like they showed so much game that it's like how is this game even real and possible? Like it's so like I always like this like the spirit of Yakuza in that sense of like when they start showing off gameplay, you know that's exactly what you're getting, and that's exactly going to be this like what they advertise is like the goofiness. You feel that as you play the game, and they have a well established
Mhm.
reputation of delivering on that. I think that's the strength of like the series as a whole. Like they're always focusing on like the fun aspects. There are some serious things that happen in the main plot for sure, but when it comes to like the moment to moment gameplay, when you just want to like wander around and explore at your own leisure, you know you're in for a good time, and especially now that Ichiban has gained so much goodwill and like the trust of like people. Like you're no longer like you're
He's
no
not the
longer like
underdog anymore. Yeah.
exactly. You are fully on board with Ichiban. You are sold on his character and his development, and you just know that he's just a fun dude to like see goof off with his friends.
And he does seem like he'd be a really good foil for Kiryu. So they interact a little bit in 7, but
Hmm.
having a whole game of that seems like it could be really fun.
Yeah.
I do want one last thing I'll say, and I don't know, like, this is not something they could ever advertise or market, but whenever I play most Yakuza games are like a dragon. One thing that eventually kind of starts to bug me at the end is that I'm like, you're running around town and you're hitting like the mini games or you're following your little sub stories or things like that. And then you'll see like a group of enemies and you really have no reason to fight them. You already really got really good gear, or in this game you're really high level. So I just like, no, don't get into battle, run. Like, and it's just it ends up being sort of this thing. I think I've been streaming some when I've been playing this game and Adam's been watching, where I'm just like, oh, please don't get into a battle, because eventually it kind of gets old. And it's one of
Yeah.
those things where hopefully they have it in a way where you don't feel that quite as strongly in terms of like, you never get to a point where the battling becomes a chore, which I
Yeah.
think in like a Dragon or Yakuza 7, it did a little bit by the end. So hopefully they kind of figure out, the progression curve or getting some challenging things, or figure out a way to kind of account for that from a gameplay standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Hopefully they do figure out how to like improve upon the RPG systems because if you're gonna make a whole ass RPG, one of the main things you should really consider is like how do I make like the progression as smooth as possible, as organic as possible, to make it feel seems like there's like not really, you're never like pulling teeth with the system almost and wrestling with that. So but we'll see. It's not on. It's just around the corner now. Unexpectedly, here it is, the beginning of the year next year.
Well, yeah, November we'll have Gaiden, and January we'll have Infinite Wealth.
Yeah, so
Uh,
I'm excited.
Do you think it'll beat it before Persona 3 launches?
I highly doubt it. It is a big ass RPG. Unless I'm the one reviewing it and we somehow like get code like fairly early. It's gonna be a big game for us for sure because it's not only just like getting out the review. It's like there's definitely gonna be people who want like guides on some stuff. Like remember the test answers from the Yakuza 7. Like that was
mm,
something that people wanted to know. So we'll see. We'll see what sort of content this has, and I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of guide work to be done as well. See.
Here, the next news post here is something that Adam has been looking forward to for a few weeks now. We finally got the official English version translation report of the Square Enix results briefing that were initially held early last month in early August. So Adam, why were you looking forward to this like financial results briefing of all things for the last couple of weeks?
All right. So, Japan is a capitalist society, and uh, Square Enix is a publicly held company. They have shareholders, and so what that means is that they do they do a financial results briefing every quarter
These are all facts so far.
Yep.
to explain to their investors, to their shareholders, how they're doing. Now, um, so their financial fiscal year starts on April, so their quarter is April through June. Now, a game released in that quarter that Square Enix released in that quarter. It's called
Yeah,
Final
in June,
Fantasy
I think.
16. Yeah. So they're giving the results of their business, and the sales of Final Fantasy 16 are a key component. Okay, I'll stop being silly. So they announced that Final Fantasy 16 hit 3 million sales. Now, without any context to that at all, that really doesn't mean a whole lot. One game selling 3 million could be a fantastic, we couldn't have ever expected this success, or for another game that could have been a total failure, depending on budgets, expectations, or whatnot. So it's literally a shareholder or an investor asked the president of Square Enix, Kiryu, I forget his first name. It's not Kazuma.
He's just Kiryu now.
Yeah. Asked him, hey, so Final Fantasy 16 sold 3 million units. How is it? Does that meet your expectations? What are you going to be doing to do further sales? Like what are we going to go from here? Now, the reason why this document that just came out is interesting is because this meeting was held almost 6 weeks ago on August 4th. And so when that happens, there's no recording or anything of the meeting. The only thing we have to go by are basically secondhand accounts. And obviously everything is done in Japanese, so we're getting kind of the secondhand translation of like what was asked, what did he say? And at the time, you get reports from like Bloomberg or whatever saying that, Kiryu said that Final Fantasy 16 sales didn't meet the high end of expectations and met the low end of expectations according to 3 people who were present or something. And it's very vague and kind of weird in terms of like trying to decipher through Twitter if what was said, if it was interpreted correctly. Sometimes these Twitter analysts, like they literally will like delete their tweets and be like, no, I said it wrong. I'm sorry. And it's just kind of tedious to be like, all right, what did he say? What was asked? And so finally, 6 weeks later, Square Enix just puts out a transcript in English. They translate it like, here's what we said, here's what we asked, and here's what was said. And let me pull it up here. So what's sort of funny is that like other companies will do this like within a week. I have no idea why Square Enix takes uh
6 weeks.
6 weeks to do that. And they basically just put themselves at the whim of Twitter analysts. So he was asked, quote, initial sales of Final Fantasy 16 were 3 million units. How did that compare to your expectations, and how do you plan to expand sales going forward? And the answer was, this achievement was in line with our expectations. To expand sales, we have planned a variety of PR activities and other initiatives to encourage more of the growing PlayStation 5 install base to play the title. So, some of that is just marketing speak, like we're going to have initiatives or whatever. But, he says it's within expectations. And, I have to imagine there's some sort of auditing that he can't just lie. So now there might be some reading in between the lines here of like, these might be their expectations for launch sales, but maybe not for like total sales, once it's all said and done or what have you. But this is basically what we have to go on. They say that Final Fantasy 16 sales were within expectations. Nothing vague about it. There's a direct source. You can find it. It's on their public site for anyone to see. It's within expectations. So sounds like
And
the
it's
start.
frustrating because like you like I remember seeing that tweet about did not meet the high end of expectations, which is like if you read that whole statement, you might say, sure, I guess that might be true. But like the
Right.
way it's initially framed, they're very clearly, it feels like whoever would have tweeted that, they have an incentive to get the engagement, right? So they're going to say, this is a true statement. I did nothing wrong, but I'm going to phrase it like this just to, have the wording did not meet in their tweet. Only then they say the high end of expectations. And you're like, wait, what? So it's very nice
Yeah.
just to get it like from the horse's mouth, stated in plain language what it was.
It's crazy how we have to teach people about primary sources. You know.
Yep.
Don't they
That's-
teach these things in school?
Yeah, but people want clout, Chow. Okay, and social media clout is way better than primary sources. Okay.
Now, around the same time when the meeting was held on August 4th, there was also stuff out there saying, like, I'm paraphrasing here, Square Enix is killing AAA or is killing AA games or
Oh, I
something
remember
like that.
that. Yep.
Yeah, and it's like, wait, really? Oh, crap. And the thing is, well, what did they actually
My
say?
my
What
my
was the
favorite Square
question?
Enix game is a AA game. How
Yeah,
dare they?
they have a lot of franchises. They're not really like the big budget stuff, but so this is the question. Now, the question itself wasn't about AAA. It was just actually something that President Kiryu, what is his first name? Takashi Kiryu, basically just brought about on his own. And this is what he said, what he actually said about AAA games. I want to improve our profitability. I see ample room for improvement in our operating profit margin and would like to start by working primarily on our HD games division. In addition, rather than solely attempting to create brand new IPs, we intend to take a nuanced approach to investment, whereby we also identify existing IPs with the potential to be upgraded to AAA status, taking return on investment into account as well. So, in doing so, we hope to establish greater depth to the layers of our portfolio. So, my interpretation of that is basically they're going to take non-Final Fantasy franchises, other IP that he said, not nothing new, just stuff they already have, and like he says, upgraded AAA status. So what that means? More budgets, certain staffs on them, certain protocols. It sounds like maybe they will take a game like, I don't know, I'm literally picking this out of a hat, not literally, but Valkyrie Elysium, and be like, all right, our next Valkyrie game, we're going to give it AAA status. More budget, more staff, more time, higher expectations, something like that. Now we have no idea which IP they're looking at here, but it sounds like not necessarily saying killing triple or killing double A games is like the most cynical way you could possibly look at this. I think it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, they're going to take some of their games and give them more resources. Now that might inevitably mean rather than releasing 16 games in 16 weeks or whatever they did last year, they might only release 10 games in 16 weeks.
Oh
I don't
my
know.
god, they're killing AA titles. Ah!
But yeah, so now these things, they always have a lead time to them. So if this is their plan and this is actually going to happen, it'll probably be 3-4 years before you really see anything from that.
Right.
But that's what they said. So again, the reason why I was looking forward to this is so we can get away from the they're killing double A games, kind of hearsay, and more like, all right, here's what he said. They're intending to pick IPs with the potential to be upgraded to AAA status. Now, yeah, I mean, you can cynically look at that as killing double A games, but come on, come on. So yeah, that was their results. Now, sort of interestingly, we're actually not too far away from the July, August, September quarter ending, and then getting the results for that
And we
quarter.
get to do this whole clown dance again till the end
Now,
of time.
what did Square Enix release? Did Square Enix release anything in this quarter? Like
Ever
I don't-
Crisis.
Oh, Ever Crisis, I
Oh
guess.
yeah, I guess you're not
Yeah.
wrong.
I can't
Actually, one of the questions is actually sort of amusing to me. So I went over two of the answers. There was a question I didn't report on this on the website, but this is sort of amusing to me. It's about Ever Crisis. I'll just read it verbatim again. What sorts of events should we be watching for in quarter two and beyond? And the answer: we are especially looking forward to Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. Given the title's nature as a free-to-play game, we believe it fair to expect substantial upside for our earnings should the title outperform our assumptions.
Mhm.
Which is kind of funny. It's just like it's almost two things. It's almost like circular logic. Like it'll be good for our earnings if it outperforms our expectations. It's like, isn't that always
If it
true?
outperforms, it'll outperform.
And then also, I thought it was sort of funny, like given the title's nature as a free to play game, we expect it to be a substantial upside to our earnings. It's I don't know if that's sort of like saying the quiet part out loud. Like we hope people really wail on this one. Uh,
Yeah. Our
I
earnings will be
have
good
like
if this free to play game makes money for us with people spending money in this free to play.
Just release all the Tifa outfits, just any outfit.
I mean that's
fine.
that's the break last.
They've already
Yeah.
started, right?
In emergency break last. That's what it says on the Tifa banners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
any outfit will do well.
I can't tell if that game's a success or not. I never heard anyone
I mean, we'll
talking about
see.
it.
I mean, I would. An investor might ask about it next. So like they'll probably hold their investor meeting in like early October, or no, actually probably be late October, and then like we'll get like the Twitter translation.
Yeah, we'll get the social media misinformation
and
wave,
then
and then the
we'll
real
get the transcript,
And then
in,
the
like, at the very
YouTubers
end
will
of the
kind
year.
of.
Oh yeah, the
put that
YouTube. Oh,
shit-
yeah, you're right. The social media misinfo, then the YouTuber reaction to the social media misinfo, and then whatever else, and then the real info.
Yeah, so it's always a bit
Perfect.
delayed because it takes about a month after the quarter ends to get the actual presentation, and then it takes 6 weeks after that to get the outline of the presentation. So yeah, it's always a little delayed.
So where do you slot into this, Chad? Do you watch the YouTuber reaction to the social media misinfo?
I watch both. I like.
Okay.
Sometimes I like hearing certain people's take about it. Like, I love hearing Penguin Z talking about like random stuff, or some ordinary gamers talk about outrage. I think their approach is really funny.
Okay.
But you
I do
know,
think
like
sometimes I do think it can be valuable for someone who is knowledgeable to say, here's my interpretation of what Square Enix is doing. Kind of having that sort of third party, I'm not biased, where Square Enix is obviously biased about what they're talking about. But sometimes you get the people who really like overreact or misinterpret or what have you. So it's a fine line.
And I don't want to get like we are the first people to have our heads on straight when
No.
talking about this. Of course not. But like it is nice to be able to have the actual presentation in front of us and talk about it rather than just say like caveat or equivocate what we're saying and things like that.
We should probably try to encourage people to seek out primary sources more and more to avoid misinformation. I think that's
you should not listen to this podcast. You should go to the source.
Go to hd.square-enix.com/eng/ir/ir news.
There you go. You heard it here first.
IR stands for Investor Relations. You don't know that.
I thought it was infrared.
Me too.
It can be.
Context is key. A few other news things that are not quite Tokyo Game Show related, though this was announced like basically at the same time when both things were going on. This was kind of an expected announcement. This is coming out of NIS America. The topic here is, of course, the Trails or Kiseki series. There were two announcements that NIS America made, one of which I believe was teased up with a ratings board, and that is that Trails of Cold Steel 3 and 4 will be launching on PlayStation 5 in 2024. Which
the cool thing about this is it's a 2-in-1 pack, so it's not like you buy them separately on PS5. It's like you get both.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
And this had happened previously with the East titles and things like that. So we kind of, it's one of those things like, oh, that makes sense how they're going to do that. And then, of course, since in July, we finally got the official English release of Trails into Reverie. The next thing on the list was, of course, Kuro no Kiseki. And then NIS America has announced that next summer, Trails Through Daybreak will launch for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, and PC. And so Trails Through Daybreak is the official English title of Kuro no Kiseki. And we got an announcement trailer that basically focuses primarily on characters, both like the playable cast and supporting cast. And then, of course, focusing on this is not Crossbell. This is Calvard. It's kind of a new entry point. It's a new arc and an ongoing story. Of course, even though it is a new entry point, it is still an ongoing story, kind of the usual caveat that accompanies this series. And then,
I have
of course,
a couple comments.
Go for it.
Finish up.
Yeah.
My last thing I was going to say is that the toggling between the two different combat modes, of course, that was big when Kuro no Kiseki was coming out in Japan, the action flavor versus the traditional flavor. Go ahead, Adam.
So 2 comments. 1 or 3 comments maybe. We already knew this was happening. Not only is it just expected, like, oh, NIS America has done the last 5 games, they're probably going to do the next one. But also, NIS America literally published the Japanese version on Steam.
Right.
It's like, wait, why does NIS America doing this? Huh? And then
I don't think they'll do
literally,
that again.
yeah, I mean it's there. It's on Steam. You can buy
I
it.
know, but I'm just saying I don't
Uh,
think they'll do that again after the Naruto sales.
anyways, uh Falcom themselves even put out a post saying this will be in English coming later. It's like, oh, okay, someone's translating it. I wonder who.
Oh,
So we knew it
crazy.
was getting translated. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was Nintendo Switch platform is new. That's brand new. It
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
exist on Switch before, so it's coming to Switch. So I
That's
don't
cool.
know if Durante is doing that port like he did Trails the Crossbell games, or if it's a Falcom internal Switch port. They've done a few. It's announced by NIS America, so I would guess Durante, but I don't know for sure. That's the thing is that there's a new Switch port.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's also that's also something like could be a delayed announcement by Falcon because they have an investor meeting at this December where they
yeah,
could announce that themselves as
what's sort
they're
of
the ones doing
interesting
it.
about Falcom is that they're one of the only Japanese companies. Most Japanese companies, especially gaming industry companies, start their fiscal year in April, where Falcom starts theirs in October. So
Yeah,
their December meeting is basically their end of the year meeting. Like everything through September, which is always why they release a game in September. It's basically like our big game right at the end of the year, at the end of our fiscal year. So yeah, they always have an announcement in September. And I don't think we covered this because it was in Famitsu. This is sort of an aside. They said they're going to be announcing a game at their meeting, or possibly before, that is different from Trails or Kaseki or East. It's like, hey,
okay.
that's a good idea in concept.
Yeah, and
So
you and I were talking about it's like hopefully it's not just like a Kaseki and like a different skin like Metaphor
yeah,
Refantasio is sort of like a Persona and a different skin.
at least
Um,
that's what it appears to be.
yeah. So
But yeah, coming.
hopefully that's exciting. Hopefully it's cool. I'm really interested to see what they have in store.
I know they've also some of the things that weren't directly in the press release, but kind of trickling out through various places. Well, the press release did announce Trails Through Daybreak is dual audio. It's got an English dub again, which is I think expected.
Yeah.
Some of the English voice actors have already announced, like, "Hey, I'm Van." I forget the actor who plays Van in English. He's announced it. I forget who it is.
Yeah,
Uh,
the announcement trailer also is also in English, and that, like they kind of
Oh,
do
it
sample
does.
voices. So
Yeah,
yeah, so like they have a pretty good voice cast, like from what I
'cause
heard
I know
from the
some
announcement
people were
trailer.
disappointed that the
it's
Crossbell games.
It's Damien Has. He's
Oh,
I think he's from
I'm not familiar.
I think he's a YouTuber, and
Oh,
I also remember he did something in Free Houses.
oh,
Seems like
yeah.
a Free House with like
Okay.
where
Yeah,
it comes
a
from.
handful of YouTubers have gone into voice acting. Maybe some of the most popular ones being like Ashley Birch.
Yeah.
But anyways, you can see there's some crossover like skill there. But yeah, so it's pretty much seems to be one of NIS America's biggest games next year for sure. So
Yeah.
next summer, I would not be surprised if it was a similar release date, kind of falling into that July window. I feel like that's a good time for these sorts of games when it's not super busy, doesn't get crowded out. We'll
Right.
see.
Yeah. Yeah. The July sounds it would be nice, but it's cool. I mean, they're very very slowly catching up to Japan with
Yeah.
like
Well, I
so.
remember like a couple years back when it was like when Kuro was brand new. It's not that old, but what was it?
It's
Three
like
years
2
ago?
years old.
It's like
2
it's at
years.
least 2021 or was it
Yeah,
2020?
2 years, 'cause the 2 years ago was Kuro, 1 year ago was Kuro 2, and then this year is East X, East
Right.
10. So,
East
Yeah,
X.
and I remember when Nice America said, "Hey, we're gonna make the crossbow games." Like, oh no, we're gonna be waiting even longer for Kuro. And like, okay, like we got through that hurdle. We got the crossbow
yep.
games out, and I think that if you want the series to have an audience, have everything available in English, uh, and on modern storefronts. And now you say, okay, now we don't have this crossbow gap anymore. You can play it, and then you can go into Kuro or Daybreak. So I think it was the right move in the long term. Of course, I don't know like what their sales expectations are and things like that, but they're continuing to get them localized. So clearly they're
Oh,
seeing enough return to keep them their heads above water.
I
And
remember
it,
the last thing I wanted to say, and
Hmm.
this is one of those things you sort of meme about, but it's right there, right for the taking. Uh, on their press release for Trails of Cold Steel 3-4, new to the Trails series, start your adventure with this dynamic combo pack.
Let's
You can
go.
start with Trails of Cold Steel 3. NAS America says so, literally.
I mean, Kondo said so too, and when the
That's
Falcon
true.
partnered with, yeah. So there you
We,
go.
we said that so many times. We're not gonna tell you not to buy their games.
Yeah. I mean, Trails Through Daybreak, unironically, like if you just wanted to play like a one-off game, this is probably the most one-off game that you can play as, because Trails Through Daybreak is fairly isolated for the most part from the rest of the Trails series. Like it is a brand new cast, a brand new location. The references to like past Trails games are pretty minimal. It's still here and there, obviously through like the world building and like what's going on like behind the scenes. But it is a pretty much self-contained story, as much of a self-contained story as you're gonna get for a while in these games. So if you just like plan to like play one of these games like a modern game, like this would be a good. I'm not gonna say it's a starting point for like your Trails game, because Trails like Kuro 2 is a fucking shit show. You need to know the entire series up to that point to understand anything in Kuro 2. I say that genuinely because I know what happened in Kuro 2. But in Kuro, like if you just want to do a one-off Trails game and be done with it, that's perfectly fine in my opinion. With Trails
I
to
think like
Daybreak.
Reverie, it's gonna take us a while to stop saying Hajimari, or in this case, Kuro, and like, oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
Daybreak now.
yeah.
Kuro is
Um,
just easier to say than Daybreak. Just it is.
it is true. Too, and like, and Chow alluded to this earlier, but earlier on in the week, I went to go like one of the thought experiment. Well, I wanted to go check in on like the experiment that Nisa had with Durante and Falcom, where we were talking about Nayuta last week, and I was really interested to see how well did that sell on PC, because that was like the first implementation of releasing the Japanese version first on PC. Like they released the PC version under Durante in North America on Steam, but it was the Japanese script only because they already had the PC port ready to go, and Durante, worked on it. And then so back in December 2021, they released the Nayuta PC release that only had the Japanese script, and their plan was, well, when we had the English localization done and ready to go, and also released on consoles, we're gonna add that in as a patch. And then back then, when we were privy to this knowledge on what they were gonna do, I even asked, a few staff members like James, like, okay, if they're gonna do that, will that have the Nayuta? Will they put Nayuta back up on the new releases list on Steam? Because, like, I wonder if that's even possible if they're gonna do it like through a patch update, if that's even eligible. Like, how early access games get back on the new release list once they reach 1.0, they're quote unquote full release. When they're ready to, you know, release it for real, not the exit early access and all that. So I noticed, this past week, oh, Nayuta's not on the new releases list, even though it came out. And then, so I was wondering, okay, well, let's see how well it sold. And then the easiest way to check up on this is like the active players on Steam charts. I'm not going to say that's like, indicative of how much was sold, but like how many people are actively playing it now. I assume that people who picked up Nayuta on PC would want to play it there and then. And the peak was an unfortunate 116, and obviously the current active people playing it was always, under 116, that never reached that peak. And that's really unfortunate because that's kind of the power of having your game up on the new releases list on the front page of Steam, is a large amount of people rely on that new releases list to kind of inform them, hey, what's out this week or what's out recently, And for a lot of people, they didn't even know, like even when they had Nayuta on their wish list, they didn't know it was out because that's like wish listing a game doesn't inform you of like a patch update, of
I
it
think I
coming.
think it only informs you if it goes on sale. I know I've gotten those emails saying, "Hey, this game on your
Yeah,
wish list is on sale," but it's not that it didn't get triggered that game had a
yes.
new patch or anything, or
Yeah,
was on sale or anything
and
like
and,
that.
and, that, and that, that's the same thing they're gonna do with Daybreak. Is the Durante made PC release of Daybreak is already out on Steam and then also published under Nice America. It's just a Japanese script only for now, and they will add this English localization when it's ready next summer. And they're gonna do it the same way they did with Nayuta, is through a patch update. So who knows what I assume it's the sales of Daybreak on PC will unfortunately be very low, like Nayuta, because of this method as well. Because I assume that it will not show up on the new releases list when it comes out next summer on Steam, and it just goes to show, like I didn't even like blame Nice America for this. It's like one of those experiments that like it sounds great on paper because of efficiency, right? But because of this, you don't know if you're going to go back to the new releases list because no one's really ever tried this before. So it's
Now I know there has been a couple of games where they release in early access, like
Mhm.
Japanese only,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then when they get the full release, they kind of time it with the English localization. So they
yeah.
maybe should have done that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, I wonder if like release. I wonder if there was like if they considered doing the early access route, and I wonder if there were like any limitations behind the scenes or any like contract agreements with Falcom behind the scenes that like prevented that because the stipulations of like releasing early access and what that could, what that kind of means for like the Japanese market, I guess. Like it almost feels like, oh, it's incomplete because it's only the Japanese script, and if that would like not go over well, you know, with Falcom and the Japanese audience, maybe there's some sort of like
It does seem like a workaround, like not the intended use of early access.
yeah. So it's a hard thing to like say one way or the other without knowing the particulars, obviously behind the scenes on their partnership. But hopefully it gets sorted out because I don't think this is really the path to go if you want like a good PC like install base there day one, like when the localization hits. That's a hard thing to solve. So we'll see what they decide to do. Especially with like I think Daybreak is already set and sealed on like it's gonna follow that path because the PC release is already out there. But I don't think Kuro 2. I don't think that PC version by Durante has been released yet. I believe.
No.
Okay, so we'll see if they adapt due to the circumstances.
And I think that covers us. Oh no, here's one other thing that was before Tokyo Game Show. So we talked last week, of course, at the Nintendo Direct about on the Japanese Nintendo Direct the announcement of a follow-up, the first in over a decade, for the Shiren the Wanderer series. And it did not show up on an English announcement. And we were like, oh, we'll probably get that down the road. So we still don't have a formal English announcement for the Shiren the Wanderer 6, but we did see a retailer, as a Canadian retailer, as they ought to do, had a listing for Shiren the Wanderer with an English subtitle called "The Mystery Dungeon of Serpentcoil Island," and then of course it's the same game. And the retail listing had screenshots. It even had like an about page that was basically like a mini press release about the game, English package artwork and descriptive text and all that. So basically, like everything was there to show that they weren't just like they were
Yeah,
given some information.
sometimes with retailers, it's like they're just guessing or hoping. They have like an empty box art, like here's a title, and just because it's a title and an empty box art doesn't mean they know anything. They're just hoping. But in this
Mhm.
case, they have like the descriptive text, new art, a new logo, and screenshots with English translation and everything. So it's like, yeah, this looks real.
Does it have a release date?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, according to the
February 27th.
Oh,
yep,
that sounds dead
Yeah.
on arrival 2 days before
No,
FF7.
no, nothing else is releasing at that time. No,
yeah, nothing
yeah,
else
should
was
be fine.
releasing in Q1 next year.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I get to ditch this game for FF7.
I assume that's going to be what the most people's plans are. But,
I'm looking
eh,
forward to that episode of the podcast where we're talking about FF7, and then James is like, "So I played Shiren the Wanderer 6." Well, actually, no, he'll
oh
probably play
yeah,
that in January. He'll probably play the Japanese version.
oh
So
yeah, so
is
yeah.
my guess. I don't know. He does what he wants.
I mean, there's also Switch exclusive, which means like I'll just wait for the PC version because Sharon the Wanderer 5 eventually hit PC. So
I mean,
That
it
is
took
true.
like 7 years or whatever, but it did.
they did. I mean, but I assume
I'm
this one will come to PC earlier than
yeah, so no
Wait, I
official
was sort of
announcement.
exaggerating. I was sort of exaggerating, but let me actually look up like when did it
Yeah, that's a good point. I have no
Vita.
idea. I'm like,
Well, Sheer the Wanderer 5, it was DS, then Vita, then Switch, then PC. Is that right?
I'll
If you
say
say
yes
so, I'll
because
believe it. Yeah.
yeah, that sounds correct ish.
All right, let me look at this. I'm going to Game FAQs release data. This is usually
That's
uh
a throwback.
yeah. Actually, Wikipedia might be easier for this. So
Yeah,
it
it might be.
released on DS uh in 2010 in Japan. And then it got to Vita in the West in 2016, and then well, forget Switch, PC. So Vita in 16, and then PC in 2020. So 4 years, not 7 years.
Okay. Did that ever hit Switch?
It did. When was
Okay.
Switch? Switch was also 2020. Okay.
Okay. So eventually, maybe, if it'd be great if to play this on Steam.
Now it's the sort of confusing thing is like why hasn't Spike Chunsoft announced this? Like what are they waiting for? I don't know. Maybe
Uh,
like so if you're not, it was announced in Nintendo Direct, and if they already knew they were going to, if they already knew that they were doing a localization, they have a art, they have a release date and everything. Why not? Usually, they would like announce it right after the Nintendo Direct or alongside it, and for some reason they haven't. Maybe they're still deciding something. Maybe that release date. Maybe they realized, oh no,
yeah, it might be, yeah, it actually might be because, oh fuck, there's a really hot release date or release period. Maybe they want to like delay it a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah.
Um,
So the thing to remember is that this is not technically official. Like
yeah.
all the art and stuff there looks like it was official at one time, but until they announce it, they can make whatever change they want. So.
It like reminds me of like when I think Stray Gods like no, what's a Stray God? It was something
Yeah,
something.
Stray Gods, they released, like, the same week as Baldur's Gate 3, and they were like, "Oh, no.
Oh yeah,
We can't
okay,
do
I think
that."
so. Yeah. So it's everyone no one is like an island, right? Everyone is very aware of like, oh, a big thing is releasing near me. Maybe I should adjust my release timing because a big thing is releasing near me. No one's plugging their ears.
Looking through the remaining announcements, there's still kind of a bit of a hodgepodge here. We'll go into some Tokyo Game Show related announcements. So, like I stated at the top, a lot of this is new details, new trailers, and a lot of just like straight up, good, sometimes 30 plus minutes of just gameplay footage. And one of the games that we were anticipating highly that we got a big look in is, of course, the aforementioned Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I guess we'll just talk about that next. So this is a game that James was able to go hands-on with Rebirth, and James actually has a lot of features up on the site for games that he was able to go hands-on with. So we might not touch all of them this week because instead of just pointing you to the URL and just say, "Hey, read his thoughts," well, next time we get him on, we'll see kind of like what were his highlights of just obviously just the trip in general, and then of course which games he stuck with him as he returns back to the States. But for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, James was able to go hands-on. Alex also put up a listicle up on the site about 7 things that he observed in the footage that are new to Rebirth that weren't in Remake. And then, of course, we have the stream footage itself. You can find it on YouTube from Square Enix's official site, just the Grasslands gameplay of everything how this game plays in a moment-to-moment setting. And there's a lot of things to talk about here. Like the gameplay showed just how the size of the map, the sorts of icons, the crafting system, fast travel, obviously combat for Red 13. We know from the trailer that of course Ketchi is also playable, but as far as I can tell, he's not playable in the demo here or in any of the stream footage from Tokyo Game Show.
I
Uh,
believe another
you
outlet confirmed that there's GameSpot or Game Informer. Like they did confirm that Vincent is not playable in
Right.
Rebirth.
I remember I did see that headline. They talk about some of the mini games. There's like a card game, I believe it's called Queen's Blood. So obviously, whenever you have a card game, it's like Final Fantasy has both hit and missed on that front before. So that's kind of interesting to see how much that'll come into play. There's a whole. This is something that I'm not sure about. There was a pretty decent amount of time spent on a piano playing mini game, which to me is kind of interesting because there is a small little story nugget in Final Fantasy VII about Tifa's piano. So I guess they're just saying like it's a mini game now. So like I don't know if they're just going to expand on that like to a ludicrous extent, but maybe it'll turn out pretty fun. So we'll
You
see
also
about
you
that.
also get like it's also a way to like get new like arrangements of like themes. Like they played Aerith's theme on like the
Mm.
stage during the piano mini game. That was nice, but it looks like something I'm gonna struggle with because that control scheme is I'm
Mhm.
not good at mini games like that. I think that the big takeaway though, like from all the previews and the stage demonstration they did, is like it feels very like the menu screen for the map is like it's like huge. I'm like, holy shit, that's a pretty sizable map. And Chadley, you help out Chadley in this installment. He's back, and a lot of it is going to be exploration based. So like you're opening up parts of that. Like it's almost Ubisoft Tower style.
It is. In my little notes, I actually wrote in
Yeah.
parentheses towers. So
Mhm.
Chadley is the young Shinra like employee in the first game who basically mans the battle simulator, but now he's like got a new, I don't know, motivation, lease on life, and he's like, I want to make a new map. I want to document the world. So basically, you go to towers and you reveal like locations of interest nearby, and somehow
Mhm.
you feed that back into Chadley, and he still offers you materia for it. So it's like the same sort of transaction there, but in a new environment of like an open world-ish game, or at least like a wide linear game. Part of me is like, when I look at that, it's just like, I don't want to say like a linear game is a fake game and a open world game is a real game, but it's just a different flavor, where in remake it's basically completely linear, except that they just decided, hey, in chapter 3 and chapter 9, in these two chapters, and I think one at the end of the game, 14, in these 3 chapters we'll give you side objectives. For the rest of the game,
Right.
it's pretty much we'll pull you on a string to the finish line, and that's the game.
Right.
Where in Rebirth, it's like, here you go. You can go to, I don't know if you can go everywhere, but it's like, here's a giant map. You can explore to your heart's content. Even if you go to town, you will find a notice board, and there will be sub objectives that will also go to your map. So you can go ahead and do this. And this is something that is a little bit under the radar, but like in remake, up until the very end of the game, like the very final battle simulator, you had no say in what your party comp was. It was just who was present at the time, because
Yeah.
they it's a part of the game, the original story, where you never had more than 3 party members. And now it's like, here's how you change party members in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's like, oh yeah, I guess you never really had to worry about that outside of the battle simulator
Like
in
one of the big
remake.
like, new features like in Rebirth, oddly enough, is like you can choose like who you run around with. While in
Hmm.
Remake, you were always locked to Cloud,
Hmm.
and that was always like a weird like transition outside of battle when you're like playing anyone else, and then it would go back to Cloud when the battle ends. It's like, oh
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
The one part of the game where you play, or like I guess a couple parts of the game where you play as Barrett or Tifa, and it's like, oh, I guess you can do this. And I was like, oh, it's just part of the game now.
Do you
Yeah.
remember the last boss fight in FS7 Remake where you don't even have control who your final party member is, and it's through like some obtuse system where depending on the choice you make is like who your final party member is?
Oh
Yeah,
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 because
yeah.
someone will jump in to help you, and it's like, it seems random. Now there is like logic behind it, like how you manipulate who it is, but it's not something you just explicitly tell the game, I want my final party to be Cloud, Barrett, and whoever. But yeah, and there's a crafting system, which, it never is not exciting on its own, but you always want to try to make your open world game have like meaningful like itemization. Something that Final Fantasy 16 wasn't really able to do. So it's curious to see like if you can craft new weapons or gear, or like what's the incentive to go out and kill stuff other than just EXP.
Yeah, I think the big thing here that they want to really focus on, especially like when it comes to like combat and gameplay, is like uh, this became an accident in remake, right? Where like in remake, it seemed like the quote unquote optimal gameplay to minimize aggro is to switch between party members, so you could
Hmm.
almost confuse the enemy AI and who to target. While in this one, it's more of a central, like more fully fleshed out system because of the synergy system, where they're explaining like you want to, since the synergy system is like a separate system from like the ATB bar. You fill these up like separately from character to character, so you want to fill them up with like 2 characters and then unleash a synergy ability together. And you're trying to encourage like actual multiple character gameplay instead of like confusing the enemy AI, is like make it more of an integral part of the system. Where like in remake you could technically get by just playing Cloud alone, and you'd be fine
Yeah.
too.
There is a system. This was brought up in Alex's feature. That I don't know if it's like a new materia or an option within the materia system, that you can have your party members auto cast certain things, so they won't just sit on their ATB gauges forever.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So there's a little bit more like, you don't have to switch constantly. It looks like they're trying to focus that a bit and try to say like, this is something you can still do. It's still viable, but it's not like necessary in terms of like, if you want to just play as Tifa because you like really comboing with her, you can set your party members to do some more things automatically and focus on the character you want to play as.
Mhm. It's also some little funny details of like how fast travel works. Is like you can set up new fast travel points by like going to like chocobo posts, like almost like stops in the out of the open world, and you put up a post, and then and then have almost like a bus stop rather, and
Yeah.
and then like the animation for it is like Cloud like pulling out like
Yeah,
a
I love
cushion,
this.
and then putting it because it's a dirty bench, and then sitting on it, and then it'll warp you to wherever you wanted to go. It's like it's a very smooth animation too. You don't see any loading screens,
It's the
which
same
surprises me.
animation as like the benches in Remake, but he just
Yeah.
without any preamble or any like flair, he just grabs a cushion, throws it on the bench, and just sits down. And then when
Yep.
he stands up after time passes, he puts it away. It's just like, oh, I guess he doesn't want to get dirt on his backside. So there you go. I also
Mhm.
like that you're picking up this little sign that has like a Chocobo Travel Rest Stop
Yeah.
like logo on it. Reminded me of those signs in Tears of the Kingdom with the
Right. Right. The President
I
Hudson.
yeah, the Hudson signs. It's like, oh, I got to pick up the Chocobo signs. So that's
Yes.
kind of fun. Like I like fast travel that gives like some flavor to it rather than just like, oh, now you've been to Calm, you can fast travel there. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit more diegetic that way.
It is like one of those like moments like if you played the original FF7, it's like wow how far technology has come and how far gaming has come because this is like like bring you when they introduce open world, it's like it's definitely in your mind's eye when you're playing the original FF7, you exited Midgard into the overworld map. It's like I wonder what this would look like, what this actually looks like if you're like just traveling around it and not just an overworld map from like town to town. Now you're actually on the ground on foot exploring the world and like how it is. You see all like the little details and like how the world of FF7 is actually brought to life instead of just like being from an overworld map. It's like to me that's like it's a crazy moment. It's like oh wow, this is how they envisioned it. You know, it's
Well,
just
I know
I don't
some people.
know.
I remember when Final Fantasy X first came out, the Lost of the World map. This is again showing our age. People like
Uh-huh.
that was a hard pill to swallow for people. And people would say,
Yeah,
well, actually, on the world map, it was pretty much just like nothing happened there. It was pretty much just like the actual intended route was pretty linear anyway, which that was more true in some cases than others. But now they're saying like, nope, like the world map is actually like we're gonna fill it with things to do. And obviously, from a little demo, it's hard to know how well they've done that, but they've shown off a lot in terms of you will be distracted on your way from Midgar to Junon or to Calm. So they've packed a lot, and it's just this kind of goes without saying, but it looks really beautiful. It looks really nice and really fluid, and the combat looks as fun
mhm.
as ever. So the preview is just really fun to watch, like the big stream footage that they had.
Yeah. There's been a lot of like footage out there, not just like from the TGS stage show from other outlets as well. So like some people have taken like footage of like the chocobo armor that you can dress up chocobos with, and all that stuff like that. It just seems like a lot of like fun shit packed in, and it's like it was almost like a sandbox, almost of like just things to do. Obviously, you can go through the main plot, and more things will open up and through time, I imagine. But just seeing things like come together in a really nice, uh, organic way, kind of just to me, it's just like kind of putting not to put down like remake because I enjoyed my time of it. It's like putting more gameplay into the game, for
Yeah,
me.
no, yeah, yeah, kind of the game shuts up and lets you play a bit. I'm like, okay, I can
Yeah.
go to Calm, or I can just mess around with the battle system for 15 hours, or I don't know how long, for several hours. And like that's the one thing about Remake is that you can't really control the pace much at all. You either go as fast as the story wants, or you can slow down and just say, all right, I got 6 quests in chapter 7, I guess, or in sector 7, I guess I better do these now. So, but yeah, obviously Rebirth is only a few months away. It's not that long. It's the big release of next early of Q1 next year, and I think it was looking really, really good. I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here.
Also, I guess while we're on the topic of Square Enix, in the Xbox TGS showing, they did announce something that I don't know if we expected, but it's like, oh, finally they're doing this, and that is that Octopath Traveler 2, which we've talked in the past, kind of awkwardly skipped Xbox when the first game did launch on Xbox, is coming to Xbox. So Octopath Traveler 2 will hit Xbox Series and the Microsoft Windows Store in early 2024. So I'm not sure how big of an Xbox only audience Octopath Traveler 2 has, but it is a really good game, one of the best of the year, and it's if you were waiting for this, I hope it gets well supported.
Well, I
Yeah,
think the big advantage is the Game Pass advantage here now.
That's
So.
true.
we
Yep.
don't know if it's coming to Game Pass. That is the one thing. We
Mm.
know it's coming to Xbox Series X, as Xbox One and Windows via the Microsoft Store, but they did not mention Game Pass at all for it. So that's
Mhm.
that's the thing. So I imagine it'll show up in Game Pass eventually if it doesn't come out there right away. But that's just a distinguishing factor.
Hmm.
Some other trailers for some previously announced games. We got another big look in for another February release next year, Persona 3 Reload. An English trailer for that. They're calling it Trailer 3. It's the trailer that focuses on the Strega group, and it shows, of course, a few other events alongside that. So this both English and Japanese versions of the trailer. So of course, one of the big things for this game is that a lot of the English, pretty much all the English cast has been recasted. So big look in there, especially for the new characters, and just a little tiny bits of footage about how the new Tartarus dungeon works. It's a little bit more bespoke, like Persona 5 now, and not the procedurally generated like the original Persona 3 was.
Yeah, I mean it is still procedurally generated, just more pretty.
Oh, okay.
There's still, yeah, there's still like you're just like the tile sets are like more fully fleshed out, but it's still procedurally generated in
Oh,
the
okay. Thanks for the correction.
yeah, yeah. But PV3 also shows that the events from Fest with Elizabeth, that social link, those events with Elizabeth are coming back in Reload, which is for some people really the highlight of Persona 3 for them, because the social link with Elizabeth, it has a lot of fun events. It's very goofy, just interacting with Elizabeth. In a separate like press release, like press blast, they kind of go over more like the side story system, if I'm correct. Adam, you put that up.
The Strega group has more events to describe
Hmm.
or to like show who they are. So,
Yeah,
I think in the original
um,
story they weren't too fleshed out, so it's more like given the opportunity to develop
yeah,
them.
we mentioned in a previous podcast that there's apparently going to be more events with the male characters because since they didn't have social links originally, they always kind of felt shortchanged. So like, okay, give the male characters more events, and I guess they're doing a similar thing with the Strega characters because in that game, once you kind of like learn who the real enemy is, they kind of just their role just sort of ends and like, oh, that's it, okay.
yeah.
Um, so that's interesting.
Mhm.
Hopefully it's good, not doesn't feel like I don't know fan fiction or something. But
Atlas has never done that with a
We got to
re-release.
redeem
no,
Strega, okay?
one thing that's also kind of mildly interesting, and as far as English voice cast goes, Elizabeth has the same voice. It's Tara
Oh
Platt
yeah,
again.
Ted Flat. Yeah, I just
Yeah,
noticed that.
and
I was
which
scrolling
is
over it.
yeah, which is kind of interesting because that's like the only character out of all the characters playable, Strega, anyone that has like reprising the role. And it's like, is it because Elizabeth is some sort of like demigod, whatever they are? So I don't know. I mean, obviously in Japan, all the voices are the same. That's not even a thing. But I don't know. For some reason, they decided, hey, Tara, you can come back. You can't do Mitsuru again, but you can do Elizabeth still. Like, okay, sure.
Sweet.
It's interesting. I like Tara, so
Yeah,
it's interesting.
yeah. Elizabeth's English voice has always been really, really good. So no complaints here.
A follow-up to one of our headlines from last week, and that is the official announcement of the next mainline Saga game, Saga Emerald Beyond. Of course, at Tokyo Game Show, they gave us a new, basically kind of, I know it's not the first look, but a first look trailer at Emerald Beyond. The 5 playable protagonists, well, I guess technically 6, one's a duo, and then a big look at the battle system. They have some some animations in this game that look really like, I don't know if we had anything quite like this in Scarlet Grace, like full motion mocap animations. And I don't know if that's just the battle system getting like a new coat of paint or what. One thing they don't show a lot of here in this announcement trailer is like the overworld gameplay, which I was actually kind of curious about because that's the thing they talked about, the emerald lines of fate or
Yeah,
whatever they called it.
they kind of described it at the stage event, the Saga stage event, about the yeah. I forgot. I think it was called Emerald Vision. They called it. So
Mhm.
as we kind of surmise, these are kind of like almost like recommendations of like events of like if you go down this Emerald Vision, like there'll be like an event waiting for you there. But yeah,
Mhm.
obviously it's up to the player whether they want to embark on that or go their own way. But like it's it is pretty close to what we were thinking when we first saw the lines. They were just detailing the characters at the stage event. They were also saying that even though it's built on the foundation of Scarlet Grace, they keep saying there's like a completely new battle system. So even though it looks somewhat similar to Scarlet Grace, like Kawazu is pretty insistent that it is a new battle system. So we'll see how that plays out.
I wonder how
part of
much
me
that
is
is
like,
marketing, just to be like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not the same game again.
not
Yeah,
the same game,
I
not
don't
the
know.
same
I
thing.
have no idea because it looks pretty similar to Scarlet Grace. I don't know how else to.
Yeah, it looks like the Scarlet Grace battle system with a few, new twists.
But the
Yeah.
thing is, I think that's what we wanted. Like, no, please tell me
Right,
that it's built on
exactly.
this.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's just like, sure, you can add
Don't
some more
make it
flair to it
completely
if you want,
different. It
but
was good.
yeah, just I hope it's rooted in the same thing because that was immaculate.
Yeah, so we'll see. And yeah, and then they're just they describe the typical saga things where like kind of no two playthroughs are the same. Even if you pick the same character, depending on the route we do, things will be different.
Mm.
Yada yada, your typical saga stuff.
Yeah, this one is also for 2024. I'm guessing summer. I don't know if they've dialed in any more specific. They just say TBA 2024, but obviously one that a lot of us here are really excited about. And the trailer is fun, so go ahead and give that one a look.
Yeah, I actually let me go pull up. There's like a recent interview with Famitsu that they did a interview about Saga, and then they stated like development on this title started in 2017, and then
Which makes
obviously slowed
sense.
down during Corona. But and then here's the thing that people need to know is that Scarlet Grace had a shit fuck ton of like recruitable playable characters in that game. There's like 80 something, I think, six or more than 80. And then this game, it's like it'll be lower than Scarlet Grace, but that doesn't mean that like there'll be like only a few. Like there's going to be fewer playable than Scarlet Grace, but that means that there'll still be a lot. And then there's going to be more variety in like the races that you can play as in this game. At some point in the interview, they're like they I think Kawazu mentions like, yeah, you can like recruit like a playable white blood cell. It's like, what the fuck does that mean, Kawazu?
Wait, what? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's like more like like it represented the game as like a slime almost, but I have no idea. And
I
then
watched too much. Was it Blood at Work or whatever that was called?
yeah, and
Cells
then
at work.
and then the another interesting thing they mentioned is that unlike Scarlet Grace, each playthrough in the game will be shorter, more like how it was in Saga Frontier 1. And then they gave a quote from Kawazu. They translated, obviously, this translation on a Reddit post was any of the games these days are really long. And I find myself thinking it looks like it's going to take me about 2 months to complete the game. But in the past, I was like, I'm going to clear it in 3 days this weekend. So I wanted to recreate that feeling, so I kept each play compact. However, the total volume will be huge. So playtime varies considerably depending on the main character. Some main characters will be longer, will have a longer playtime. So it's still gonna have a lot of content in it, but I think that they're trying to make an average playthrough more contact but more substance, like more, eventful. I guess is the the
My
key phrase here.
takeaway is probably just like Sega Frontier. I mean, each playthrough for a character is like 10 hours, and there's 6 playable. Is it 6 or is it 5? Because one is a pair. So
It's five routes here. Six characters, 5 routes here because there's a duo route.
and
So
didn't he also say there was multiple endings with some of the routes too? So
probably, yeah. I think
so, so that'd be
so.
like that would be a pretty long game still.
Yeah, I imagine this will still be a long game, but I think they're trying to reel in like the total playtime per playthrough, like Saga Frontier did. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm really hyped for this game, man.
Oh
I
yeah,
can't
me
wait.
too.
Another game that we got a new trailer for just soon after learning its new release date. We talked about Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes is launching on April 23rd, 2024. That was announced last week. But we got another look in at the Tokyo Game Show focusing on the 100 heroes, the playable characters. I guess one thing, Adam, is this the first time they've explicitly stated that this third person on the box art is a main character. You've got
I said this last week.
okay,
So Marissa was always a character, and in fact, she was already a little bit special compared to the rest of the 100 because she was going to have a special DLC.
right.
But if you compare basically the key art from last year to this year, she was added to it alongside Noah and Rain or Sane or whatever his name is. So like I said this last week, she seems to have been elevated to being a main character. Like
Yeah,
she's
and
that
then
about it,
explicitly in this trailer they say 3 heroes bound by destiny. So it's basically like, oh,
right?
yep, complete like
And I think I also said last
mhm.
week that like there wasn't an Eiyuden Chronicle trailer. It was more just the Nintendo direct style of narrator saying this game is coming out next year or whatever. So now
Yeah,
this is the actual like trailer.
yeah. And this trailer had, they showed off the theme song for the game, "The Flags of Brave" by Sarah Elaine. They also showed off the English dubcast for the first time in the English trailer of the
And
Tokyo
it's a
Game
lot of
Show.
new names, which or at least names I'm not as familiar with, which is always good
Mhm.
just to see like and it sounds fine to me. It's hard to judge in a trailer where they just kind of cut voice clips out of context and things
Yeah.
like that. It never lands quite right. But it sounds pretty good. Names that I don't quite
The-
recognize. I'm excited to get to know these people.
they really like, even though the game isn't fully voiced, they emphasize that they gave a voice to at least a voice to each hero. So like there'll be at least a voice line for out of each hero, if not multiple. So that means this game is dual audio. There's over 100 voice actors involved in both the English and Japanese cast for this game, which is crazy to me. I'm
Yeah.
just like, holy shit, that's a lot. But as for the stage event that they showed at 50, I think it was 505 Games, they showed this. Um, where the like, if you remember like the duel scene between Noah and Sane from like last year on the bridge during like almost like they're on Sunset. Um, During this like duel, there's like certain commands that a player can do, like an option, and depending on what option they choose for during the duel, that duel can take place elsewhere, like in different locations. For example, in the gameplay clip, like after Noah and Sane trade some blows, Noah jumps off the bridge onto a field, and then so the duel now takes place on that field because Sane chases after Noah during that duel. And then they said there, like if you picked a different option, it might have ended up in a different location. So kind of switching up how making duels like more exciting to look at. And I think one of the weird bizarre things that caught my attention was they showed off one of the mini games in Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. Is the stage play mini game, and for example, they showed off stage play of Cinderella, and depending on how many characters you recruited and which characters you recruited at that time, they'll show up in that stage play, and it's all fully voiced during that mini game. So you could have different like versions of Cinderella played out depending on like when you decide to, I guess, engage with this mini game, depending on like your roster of characters. And they also mentioned this is not only the stage. Cinderella isn't only the stage play uh, in the game. It won't be the only stage play. So it's kind of like a weird like going the extra mile for this like one of these mini games as well. It's like, oh, how many different versions of like a stage play there could be, depending on like if it's like like switching up depending on like what your roster size and specific roster characters are, because they have different like lines, voice lines, in that Cinderella mini game, which is kind of like a weird, fascinating thing to think about. It's like it's almost like it's almost recklessly ambitious, I guess, depending on how far they went with it, right?
One thing that I've really kind of noticed on this trailer, and I think like this is the most like just pure gameplay that we've seen from the game in a while, at least to my memory, but I haven't been
Mhm.
like hawking the Kickstarter page or things like that, is I almost get a little bit of like um maybe like 10 years ago Falcom vibes where you have like these big 3D animated beast models or boss models being fought with your party being like these detailed sprites.
Mhm.
And there's like this mix of 2D and 3D that I actually think kind of works out pretty well in this style with the way that the camera is like pulled back and like a little bit isometric from the for the battle system, having the thing on the other end be like a 3D giant horned dragon thing. I actually think it looks pretty damn neat. So
I
uh,
wonder. I don't know. Like I don't know if they because building off of your point, because like during this parts of this trailer, there's like they showcase like the 3D field environments, like a siege going on, like
mhm,
with these like siege equipment, and like
mhm.
I can't remember if like one of like the Kickstarter things they mentioned when they announced this game is like, are they gonna have like sort of like that war mode like that was in Suikoden? Do you remember, Adam, what I'm talking about? Where it's
Yeah,
like, okay,
every Suikoden game, or at least most of them, had
yeah.
some sort of like war mode.
Yeah, and I was wondering, like, do they have a war mode in 100 Heroes that they were pitching during the Kickstarter? I don't
I
remember.
also remember in the English version of Suikoden 2, at least, this is one of those things, like, when you're playing it, like, without knowing, you're like, "Huh, that's strange. There's no music in the war mode." And then you realize that was a localization bug. There is
Oh,
music, it
yeah,
just wasn't
yeah.
ever in the Western version. Like, "Oh, okay." Anyways, that's one of those fun little things.
So yeah, that they kind of showed off bits of that, but I don't know if there's actually like a dedicated war mode or not in this game. But it reminded me of that.
I'm pretty excited for this one. And so far, April is not as crowded as the
Don't
other
jinx it.
months. Uh,
Don't jinx it,
Adam, you
Brian.
started Adam, you started putting together like a 2024 list, right? Because
Yep.
we're starting to get a lot of dates now in terms of next year, especially in the first half.
Is April still safe, Adam?
Right now, this is the only date for April.
All right, the
Yeah, and
only
nothing else will
game
be added.
ever. Yep,
Yeah, nothing else will release in April, for
yep.
sure. We're not getting ahead of ourselves.
Dragon Quest HD, guys.
Yep.
Mhm.
I'm sure.
Mm,
Oh yeah, we
mm.
still haven't seen that. I guess this would have been where we might have expected to see that pop up, and it didn't. Dragon Quest 3
Probably,
HD.
yeah. Probably they really want to promote Adventure of Dai as their main Dragon Quest thing right now. I don't think we're gonna
Yeah.
see that until their next dedicated Dragon Quest live stream event, whenever that happens, because those tend to pop up whenever Square Enix decides to. They should do it.
I think the last one was in December. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We got more footage for the upcoming Dragon's Dogma 2, including like a gameplay deep dive narrated by Hideaki Asuno. And a lot of this is basically, it's more useful if you haven't played Dragon's Dogma 1, because it's about like, here are the starting class, here's how pawns work. But it does kind of show what they're really trying to hit in terms of having the world be like reactive, in terms of
Mm.
not only like day night things, but talking about like the game has this the gameplay footage, I guess, just to try to tee it up, covers everything from combat to progression to the pawn system to the classes that you play as, but also like little things like you can ride carts from place to place, and you can either like wait out the travel trip or like close your eyes to fast travel.
Skip it. Yeah, that's funny. That
Yeah,
legitimately like made me chuckle, because like they it's like an admission that like even they found it slow in the first one, because you have like a handful of those in the first segments in the first one. It's like, yep, it's still going. That card is still going. And
yeah,
if you want
and
to
then
live that
but
out,
yeah, your cart can be like attacked mid run. So I'm
yeah.
imagining like I hope it happens either whether you're sleeping or not. So like you close your eyes, then you just get like woken the fuck up because like, oh shit, we're under attack. Or you're riding it and you're like just being immersive and letting it play out in the background. And then all of a sudden on the horizon, you see like an ogre like climbing over a cliff coming to attack you.
I
There was
probably want
one.
to. I like for me. I would probably let it play out, because I'm that sort of like sicko in Dragon's Dogma, where I like seeing how the
Mhm.
world sort of kind of comes alive around you. Um, Dragon's Dogma
One
was
thing
kind
that
of
they
full of that.
showed in the gameplay footage that to me, I'm not sure how they did it. Like that's got to be something that's just pre-baked in, right? Is that they push like a troll towards the end of a cliff, and I'm thinking, oh, they're gonna push him off. Hell yeah! But then the troll like falls backwards and ends up like bridging the gap between two ledges. Like he's like
Yeah, that was so cool.
and then like I think it's when they're showing thief footage and the thief like runs over the troll like to the other side. I think it's when it's the thief. So like he gets to the other ledge because he crawls over the troll's body to it. And I'm like, that's got to be just like something pre-baked, right?
It's hard to
But
say.
it's hard to say, yeah. And
Yeah,
they should the variety of monsters are really cool. Like even just like there's they show a few times. I think when they're showing the magic archer footage, just like a very vanilla, and I say vanilla, but I don't mean it with negative connotation, like a very classic griffin. Got like the eagle head and the white feathers and like the four claws, and it just looks like big and majestic. And they also have like chimeras, and like a lot of these were present in the first game, but now this is 15 years a visual touch up, and it just looks like really like neat. Like hell yeah, I want to just see like a cool rendition of a very classic Griffin and what it looks like here.
It looks very weighty, like
Yeah.
like the quality animation work and like the feeling of weight as you're traveling around. I feel like they really nailed that
Mhm.
upon first glance. Like
Well,
wow,
even in the
that's crazy.
first game, like I remember thinking, the first game was was a game, over 10 years ago now, where it was like magic really felt like holy shit, I'm summoning meteors
Yeah,
or a tornado or a lightning bolt, and you don't take it for granted, and that's
yeah,
still
it
present
was a
here,
big
some of the
deal.
magic that they show, but like some games they don't have that weight to them where you might be fighting something that's ostensibly 20 feet tall, but it doesn't feel like it because you can jump really high or whatever, or movement so fluid that everything else feels small. But in this game, it's like, oh crap, how am I going to get up there? Oh crap, that griffin's flying above me. How do I hit him? I hope I have like an archer on my team or a spellcaster.
I guess for like a easy comparison, it's like when you cast like Faraga in a Final Fantasy game, it's like yeah, it looks cool with like the big explosion, but like at the end of the day, you kind of just that Faraga interacted with the enemy, it did a lot of like big damage, but like it's like to you it's just like it's a fancier fire spell. While like if you're like to cast like a Faraga of equivalent in Dragon's Dogma, it would take you like 30 years to charge that Faraga spell up, but when it fired off, it fucking cleaned house and you
Yeah.
just like and like everything around you is just fucking on fire. The enemies are just like burning up in ashes, and you're like, "Yup, I fucking casted a fire spell, all right," and it was
Yep.
great. And
And
yeah,
like
so
the particle effects on the spells look really nice. It's interesting because it's not the prettiest looking game in terms of technical fidelity, but I love the art direction. It's a little bit
yeah,
muted in terms of like it's not super vibrant. It's a little bit muted in terms of like the color hues, but it fits. I don't know a way to describe it. It really feels like going for that classic fantasy epic look,
like the
and
like
it's in line with the first game, so it's nothing
like
surprising there.
the like when they're showing footage of this game and they show off like the weightiness of like getting around, like I'm reminded of how impressed I was when I don't know if people remember this. This will always be something I'll always remember. But the very first time they showed off White Knight Chronicles on PS3, like the very first footage, like I was super impressed by the character animations of like getting around and the weighty animations of how you interacted with stuff in that game, and especially when during that initial gameplay footage when you could have your character like pin down an enemy, like straddle their shoulders up against yours to create an opening for your party member. Like I get that sort of sensation that I with this Dragon's Dogma 2 footage. Obviously, that initial White Knight Chronicles footage never translated into the full game. There was like a lot of alterations to like the way that combat was presented in that game that really didn't capture that magic. And I've been sort of looking for that magic again in a video game where like the animation work impresses me so much that like I'm willing to believe it. I'm willing to believe that like this is exactly how kind of the slow, meticulous combat is, where it might be like, even though it's not the most flashiest thing, every movement and positioning and impact matters, and that's just conveyed visually and through sound design, which
I don't know
really
why, but it always kind of it's amusing to me that like who developed White Knight Chronicles? Oh yeah, Level
level
5.
5.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are they up to?
And
Technical
yeah,
news.
so I forgot, Brian, is Mystic Spearhand a new vocation in this game? I'm trying to remember. I remember Mystic Swordsman, I believe, was an old
I
vocation, and
remember
Mystic
Mystic
Archer.
Swordsman. I believe I remember Magic Archer. I don't remember the
Yeah,
Spear Hand.
yeah. To me, I was like, I think Mystic Spearhand is a new vocation in Dragon's Dogma 2, and that looked really cool. The brief gameplay footage that they showed off, as James mentioned in his preview, it's like it's building off of like the original in a really great way, kind of realizing the potential of the original, but also like all the new features that are in Dragon, like most of those new features, Capcom is still holding close to their chest. Like there's still a lot that we don't know about this game under the hood. So it's pretty much, I think, this initial press blast for Dragon's Dogma 2 is to kind of get everyone else caught up to speed of like what's Dragon's Dogma, pretty much. And that's a hard thing
So
to convey to people, to be honest.
I looked it up. So yeah, Magic Archer is returning. The other game had Mystic Knight. But one thing that's kind of that I forgot about is that this game clearly shows 4 starting professions: uh, fighter, archer, thief, and mage. And Dragon's Dogma 1, Thief and Archer were kind of together as Strider. And then
Yeah.
Ranger was an advanced class and Assassin was like a hybrid class. So basically what I'm saying is before you had 3 starting classes that could tier up or hybridize, and now you have 4. So basically I'm expecting to have a significant total number much higher than in the previous game.
Yeah.
Because now you can
And
hybrid them, multiple ways.
so we'll,
I
we'll
want to see
see.
the magic thief, the magic assassin.
Ooh.
I don't know, well, I guess that would be like an arcane trickster, like in Pathfinder or D&D.
Hmm.
Damn, I think I just figured out my Dragon's Dogma class. Whatever the magic thief is, that was gonna be me.
Dang. Yeah, I'm kind of eyeing Mystic Spearhand already, but who knows? They might there's still so much we don't know. So
When,
and there's also, aside from James' preview, there's also some other outlets that have taken recorded gameplay footage on their own, on their hands-on with Dragon's Dogma 2 at TGS. So yeah, I remember I skimmed the one for IGN and like a cool. Obviously, Dragon's Dogma 1 had this too, but it's just nice to see like little small details uh, carry over from the first one. Like when you have a warrior pawn, when you go up to them, that warrior pawn could be trained to just go up to an enemy and throw it at another enemy. Just pick that fucker up and then throw it at another. So good to
I'm
see it.
excited for
Good to
this one.
see. Yes.
I know I've said that a few times, but damn, like 2023 was a crap ton of games that we're still working our way through, and 2024 just doesn't look like it's letting up at all.
Still no release date for Dragon's Dogma 2, so
Yeah, I guess we don't know
know
for
yet.
sure that this is 2024. Oh, I guess the only other thing I didn't mention was we already knew this based on just like the key art, but there is a clear second civilization, second kingdom of the Beast Ren,
Mhm.
which is of course an option for your playable character as well. And they talk about how the cities of the humankind. I don't. Do they just call them humans? I forget what they actually call them. But yeah, the
I
human looking people, and then the Beast Ren. And the Beast Ren, they say, is like a much older city, and they show like footage of them walking through like the city streets and the market stalls and things like that. And there's different quests in both, and kind of it gives a idea of a much more expansive world in the first game, which had like Grand Soren and just like a few areas around it. So yeah, that's also a key part of this game that we haven't quite seen exactly how that comes into play yet.
But they did show what we have seen in the gameplay footage from other outlets is you still consume stamina when you're running out in the field, not in combat. I'm sorry, they kept that.
Well, don't worry, I'll find a hex editor, and or maybe I'll trust that they balanced it better, and you don't just sit there and huff and puff every 20 seconds.
Trust them to Itsuno mission.
Yeah, I trust you. I trust in Itsuno. We did get a new trailer also for the upcoming Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. This is the Dragon Quest Monsters 3 spin-off coming out in December.
It is not a spin-off. It is a mainline title over in Japan, Dragon Quest Monsters 3.
Well, I meant like it's using a lot of the same characters from Dragon Quest Monsters 3, right?
It's
No,
using you go, Adam.
Yeah, okay,
so
explain it to me.
it's the Dragon Quest Monsters sub-series. This entry is set in the same world as Dragon Quest IV.
Okay.
Is that what we're getting at? So it's a spin-off of the main series. If
Wait, no.
you're getting technical, it's a mainline Dragon Quest Monsters game.
Yes.
There you go.
And it's a prequel to 4, or is it
It's like concurrent,
okay?
I guess. It's weird.
Okay. So I thought it was 3, but I guess it's from 4. Okay. Sorry about that. But yeah, that's coming out in
Well,
December. Go ahead, Cow.
I was gonna say, well, there's a Dragon Quest news in Tokyo Game Show. Still nothing for 12 or that HD remastered that they showed once.
Well, it
I mean,
doesn't
yeah,
make sense because this is the one coming out in a couple months. They were always going to give a chance to like, hey, support our game that's coming out in before the end of the year. So I think this is kind of expected that we'd see this. And then of course, they're like we talked about this last time. We do have the demo that's available. That was announced last week, so you can get a feel for getting your monster party getting ready for the full release. One of the ways they've been marketing this is they do they did this both like with the I believe last week and then also alongside the press release here is kind of talking about the memorable locations and characters that you also might recognize from Dragon Quest IV. So I haven't played this game, but like he says, you will find settings such as Zenitha and Rose Hill and Diabolic Hall. Like I don't know if these are locations in Dragon Quest
Yeah,
IV.
they are.
So yeah, it seems like if you've played Dragon Quest IV, you're gonna get a lot of little like nostalgia look-ins and teases for this game, which is kind of fun. We got new. I don't think I saw a trailer for this, but we got some just details and screenshots for the upcoming Persona 5 Tactica. And in addition to this, I do know that James was able to go hands-on with it. I didn't dive too deeply into this, what they showed here, but I don't know if anyone who's played, like, because I haven't even played Persona 5, if people have seen anything interesting on this Tactica, or if we're kind of at the point where it's launching in a little over a month. Just wait for the launch.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of going through the motions of like just detailing more of the stuff that you can do in the game. But that's fairly, I don't know, standard for a strategy RPG. You know,
Mhm.
see some tougher enemies. You can interact with the environment in certain ways, and yeah, I mean, it's just around the corner. And I guess the big thing here is like, um, everyone can equip a sub persona. You know, it's not just tied to the main character. Like
Right.
everyone has, an additional persona aside from their main persona.
Let's see. I'm making sure I didn't skip anything. Oh, here's one I accidentally skipped. We did get a trailer for an upcoming new title called Megaton Musashi Wired, which, as far as I'm aware, this is another one of those level 5 titles. So, level 5's revival in this year into next year. It is correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, this is kind of a remaster re-release of Megaton Musashi, which released a few years ago only in Japan, but this one is global and it's cross-play and it's multi-platform. So it's kind of like trying to get Megaton Musashi to expose to a wider audience.
Yeah.
And this is still slated for this year, as far as I know.
I
So, but
mean
we don't have a date.
that is the running theme of level 5 stuff is like they have a lot of releases like Megaton Musashi, Deca
They have
Police,
4.
Fantasy Life, and Inazuma 11.
Yeah,
Um, they're all still slated for 2023, and everyone's wondering. We're at the end of September. You're running out of 2023 to release
yeah.
a fuck ton of games. So we don't know. I have to assume they're gonna delay a good chunk of these, if not all of these, at this point. You know. Um, but yeah, this new trailer for Megaton Musashi Wired, as you said, there's sort of like an enhanced re-release with some new content, like some new bosses. Um, but that was Japan only. Aside from cross-play, there's also supports cross-save between PS5, PS4, Switch, and Steam. Um, and yeah, and then the new trailer basically gives you a summary of like the things that you're gonna do. Like mostly, it's gonna be like you're customizing a robot, different parts, kind of giving it customizing like custom colors, emblems, victory poses, and showing some of like the action RPG combat. And unlike say something like Armored Core, like the online element is a lot more evolved. I think there's some sort of like PVE online element to this game as well when you play with your friends, other people. And yeah, it's coming to the West as well, and we just don't know if it's going to be this year. They keep saying it's this year or beyond that.
I really like the style of Bex in this game. They're a little bit more like chunky and not as sleek.
Yeah. They're kind of the short and kind of wide, but they're kind of they're compact.
Hmm. They're stout.
Yes.
We talked about the announcement of the newest Vanillaware title last week, Unicorn Overlord. I noticed whenever we tweet about this, it gets a lot of following, mainly just because I think the art is so good. And speaking of that, we got a big batch of like character portraits, screenshot, and general artwork for this game, alongside some of the gameplay details as well. Because this is obviously Vanillaware has dipped their toes into like a visual novel with Aegis Rim, but now this is dipping their toes into like a strategy RPG. So some not only the character portraits, but how the battle menus look, how kind of the isometric map screens look, and a whole slew of screenshots just showing off what this game looks like, and it is surprise very pretty.
Yeah, It's kind of just kind of giving you a detailed, like like a first look at like, hey, here's the protagonist, here's some of the companions that he has, and then kind of the antagonist, and obviously, just I think aside from people just waiting impatiently for March 8th, for this to release, it's just like every screenshot they release, it's like it's always just good to see new vanilla Vanillaware artwork, new Vanillaware anything really. You're just in
I
for a
think
treat visually every
I,
time.
I think it shines the best in the battle gameplay. Like
Mhm.
the world map, everything's a little bit like shrunken and deformed in a deliberate way, but just because it's just supposed to be like representative of who the character is or who the class is. But then like when you have like the side portrait view of either the dialogue or the battle system, it just looks really really pretty.
Yeah, and there's some sort of like option in between recruiting characters, because the one screenshot has you either giving the player the option to either recruit the character or executing the character. So I wonder
Right.
if that'll affect anything else in the game aside from just like a challenge, a no recruitment challenge run. I wonder if there's like multiple endings or something.
If
Yeah,
there's an option to recruit a character, you kind of want to say like, how do you balance that? New playable character or just be a dick? Like, so I wonder like just in general, like what they do to balance those options and make each one equally like viable.
Yeah.
Were you saying something, Chow?
I was gonna say just do a solo run or recruit Thunder God
Lone,
Sid like in Final Fantasy
lone
Tactics.
wolf run.
But did the wasn't there like an interview with the creator recently? I think they said the game is like about 50 hours long from their play
Oh, yeah,
test or something.
there's some sort of like interview, I believe, on probably in Famitsu. But I'm not too 100% sure what it, but Vanillaware staff did mention that like it's a pretty lengthy game.
Yeah,
I guess I'll just keep it at that. Mhm.
yeah, it sounds pretty beefy to me. 100 hours for a completionist run. It's like, there's one thing I'm kind of wondering if they have. I'm not sure you guys have ever played the original Ogre Battle. Have you played the original Ogre Battle?
I played the original Ogre Battle. It was
Do
10
you
million years
remember
ago.
how hard to like get like the ultimate ending, like the world card at the
Oh,
end?
yeah, I remember it was super obtuse and very convoluted.
Yeah, you had to like liberate the city and make sure that meter doesn't fall.
Oh yeah.
I hope
Okay.
they don't have some shit like that. 'Cause that shit was
Yeah,
fucking
we'll
hard.
see. Who knows? Yeah, the Vanillaware is not. They do like their multiple endings.
Yeah, there was a lot of endings in Ogre Battle because there's all like endings of the tarot cards
Hmm.
basically. But yeah, I'm interested, man. I have to see how it goes.
Chow, I'm so happy that you mentioned tarot cards
Why?
because we did during this last week get the announcement of 3 new, I believe all 3 of these are indie titles, or some of them might be like quote unquote double A. And you just told me or helped lead me to which one I was going to talk about first. So Dongan Entertainment has announced a game called Exit Veil, where it actually incorporates using a tarot deck or a tarot deck. And like, so this was like announced with a preview trailer, and it seems like I don't know if all versions of this game will actually have a physical deck or only some, and then like a base version will have like a digital analog. But in general, I just think that's kind of like the sort of thing these kickstarted projects, that this game was a kickstarted project, can do. That's kind of interesting. Is they're like gonna have you do this thing like, what was that like PS2 digital game that actually had like a what's it called, like Dominion or
It was a PS3
It's
game, wasn't it?
PS3, the Eye of
oh
Judgment.
Oh
oh,
yeah,
that's
it
what it was.
was.
I had that. I had a PlayStation Eye, and I had the card mat, and multiple Eye of Judgment decks. I was an Eye of Judgment uh, champion. I
Yeah,
was like, what's a good word for this?
what are you gonna tell me next? Are you gonna tell me you're an anti-meta gamer of Yu-Gi-Oh or something?
No, I mean I also played Yu-Gi-Oh too, here and there when I was younger, but
Oh no, you
um,
don't understand the anti-meta meme.
well, I don't know the anti-meta. I mean, no. But Eye of Judgment was a really, really cool concept. I mean, like it didn't have to be the most interesting gameplay, but the novelty was so cool because you would have the PlayStation Eye up on a stand, looking down at the mat, and when you put down a card on the field, like a monster would materialize on your game screen. And so you'd have like footage of like real time footage of like what it's showing on the what's in front of you, and then obviously on the screen the monster will materialize as well on the screen. It was some really cool tech at that time because it reminded you of like, oh man, if you were a big fan of like say like Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, and you wish like you'd see the monsters when you play them, it was basically fulfilling that dream. It was great.
So you can't pledge anymore, but when the Kickstarter was live, it looks like the game itself was about $25, and then getting a tarot deck was about $50 separate. So, and then I'm going to, and again, this is Dangan Entertainment's Exit Veil. The
Well, it's developed by
developers.
Cherry Mochi, who did Tokyo
Mhm.
Dark, which I believe
Yes,
Josh played.
I did.
Oh,
It was a neat horror game.
yeah. So I went to their official website and seeing if I could see anything about the deck and how it's incorporated. And there's a lot. They have a pretty large press kit, so I won't probably dig through this too much. But just the concept is pretty fun. It looks very atmospheric. It's just a short little teaser for the game, but I just thought it was like an interesting concept. And Chow had mentioned a tarot deck, so I figured, oh, I'll use that to launch off into one of 3 indie game projects that have been announced over the last week. Another one that just got a very, very quick look in is it looks like they're calling it a combat and exploration RPG, but it looks more like a blobber to me, like a first-person dungeon crawler from Acquire called Scars of Mars. It looks like a cross like sci-fi horror, but a first person's perspective on a grid. It kind of reminds me of like what a Legend of Grimlock or
Grimrock, yeah,
Grimrock,
Grimrock, yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. It talks about it's procedurally generated, um,
So
but
the thing, you're gonna get to it. Go for it.
no, go ahead.
Okay, so like unlike Legend of Grimrock, you remember how Grimrock is like sort of turn based,
Right.
where every time you move, the like enemies will move around you. This
Mm.
one is kind of it sounds crazy. They're saying time is always flowing in this one, where everything is happening in real time. So you see that battle systems are done through a 3x3 grid in this game, but it's you're not waiting for a turns or a turn order. It's basically you're planning on the fly on like which characters you're taking control of, what they're doing, and since it's all in real time, enemies are free to attack you when it's like when it's kind of quote unquote their turn to attack almost. um that's kind of the main thing about this game. They're kind of also talking about that there'll be some sort of like class system where you can combine it with like different frames and weapons, and it almost sort of has like a rogue like progression, because they're talking about like how when they're like talking about starting runs in this game.
Mhm.
So yeah, other than that, details on like the specifics are sort of sparse, but there's some um UI and HUD system sort of menus going on in the trailer that you can sort of glance at. So
Yeah,
it seems cool. It seems
the
cool.
way they represent the grid at the bottom is pretty fun.
Yeah,
Like where the
it's
enemy is,
pretty.
versus where the player is.
It's very visually catching when they go to like the battles in this game, because it's
Mm.
so there's so much going on. And it's kind of like almost sensory overload, and you're trying to make sense of what's going on, and that's kind of what catches your attention. It's like, wow, huh?
To me, this
So
seems like
neat.
an Adam game. And
Oh,
Adam's like, okay, I'm
oh.
into it. And the last indie game announcement of the last week, that at least that we caught here, is Gamera Games and DLU Studio have announced Abyss Fantasia, which to me kind of looks like a cross between that Wildermyth game that Adam covered before, as well as that just the concept of Made in Abyss, which is of course had the game adaptation that we talked about last year that Josh played. Only this one doesn't have that art style. Just the concept of traveling deeper and deeper into an abyss. The art style is more kind of like Western comic booky. I guess is how I would describe it. Or almost like Western graphic novel, with like comic panels and things like that. So this was just announced at Tokyo Game Show. It is slated to release in 2024. Again, the name of the title is Abyss Fantasia.
Man, I did not
Inspired.
like hearing the name Fantasia. Sorry, it reminds me of this terrible Konami RPG I played in the PS2, like called Imperial Fantasia or something. Oh my god, brings
So
back nightmares.
that's why that word traumatizes you now.
Oh man, you have never played an RPG that bad in my life.
Okay.
You gotta try
I
it,
mean,
bro.
I'll just be honest. When I saw Abyss Fantasia, I'm like, Tales of Abyss, Tales of Fantasia. Okay.
There you go. But it spells
Anyways,
Fantasia
by the way,
with an F.
they specifically say this was inspired by Maiden Abyss, at least the concept.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I didn't look too much into it. So now that you bring that up, maybe I should check it out.
I think it's inspired in so much as just like there's a big hole. We need to
Big
explore
hole.
Nice.
Where's my Falcom expired?
Yeah, just like East 8.
it.
But okay, so
Yeah.
at least before we close out the podcast, I at least wanted to make sure that we called out Exit Veil, Scars of Mars, and Abyss Fantasia as
But
announcements
also,
that kind of
James also checked out a pretty cool indie called Witch and Lilies. It is a Yuri dungeon RPG, he called it. And this it has a pretty interesting cast because the Makoto Kedoin. I'm so sorry if I'm like pronouncing your name incorrectly, but the one who was responsible for like Death and Request and Corpse Parties like scenario. They're also working as scenario writer for this. So he went to go check out this Witch in the Least title at TGS that I wanted to call out because it's something like, we didn't know anything about it and he just kind of went into it blind and, was very, very impressed with what he played from it. And that's being developed by Stromatosoft and also published by them. And it seems to be like a dungeon RPG experience, sort of coming to PC sometime in next year. So just wanted to give that a shout out for James because I know he's also been, aside from like the big titles, like Infinite Wealth and FF7 Rebirth, and
East 10, even though we
eventually
don't
East
have
10.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though we don't have anything officially Western facing for East 10, he did play it while over at Tokyo Game Show.
Yeah, so he's also checking out some smaller things.
And then I'll let him talk about this next week, or
Yeah.
I don't know if he's back next week or the week after. But he did put up, as we're talking about level 5, he put up a preview for Deca Police, which is kind of like that Cyberpunk ATB gauge, like turn-based RPG that they announced earlier this year. And he has his his title says it might be TGS Game of the Show, and then he was talking about it in chat how he thought it was really, really surprising, and he thought really highly of it. So I'm interested to hear him talk about Deca Police next week to see like exactly what was. Obviously, we had the feature up on the site as well. Sorry if you hear my dog's collar behind me.
Hi, doggy.
Yeah, he did good. He's like, you've been sitting here for 3 hours. I want out. So Deca Police, obviously, one of those games that is still slated to come out this year, like all the other level 5 things. But James thought really highly of it. I'm eager to pick his brain when he gets back about what he saw in Deca Police. So, and I think that I know I've had a bad habit of accidentally skipping headlines, so I think it covers all the things. I mean, the thing with Tokyo Game Show is they initially get a trailer, and then you'll get like a stream or a panel that will replay the trailer alongside like dev commentary or additional footage, and then you get like other things alongside where you get the interviews in different publications. So I'm sure other
Yeah, like
things will.
for example, this is just a small thing. During the Saga stream, Kenji Ito was talking about he's the composer, like all the different music he's composed for it. And it's just sort of amusing. I mean, it's not really surprising. He's like, for the magical girl character, I had to watch and read a bunch of magical girl stuff to like know what sort of music I should make. Fun stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Guess he's probably watching hours of Madoka, probably.
Well, not only just that, there's a lot of other magical girl stuff out there beyond Madoka, Good on Ito for doing research on that. I mean, he's a dedicated composer. He gives it his all every time.
The last headline that I see here is something for this week. We're going to get a Sword Art Online Last Recollection demo. The demo will be available for consoles, so PlayStation
Isn't
and
that
Xbox.
one the All-Star one, the one with all the cast all in one?
Yeah,
Is that the one?
everyone's here.
Mhm.
Yeah, the last recollection. But yeah, once again, the demos are only for the PlayStation and Xbox platforms.
Mhm.
No PC demo. Kind of the norm, but there have been some cool people like Square Enix who still believes in PC demos,
Mm.
and Exceed also with Silent Hope.
And that covers us for our first go through of everything that came out of Tokyo Game Show. Of course, we will likely revisit a lot of these as James returns and recounts his experience. But we've made it through. Or I guess we still have a few weeks of September left. Or I guess when we next meet. Oh, that reminds me, I won't be here next week. Sorry, guys. So there'll be one
So-
more. There'll be
What?
one more podcast in September, but I won't be here.
Wait, where are you
So
going?
I'll just have family in town, so I won't
Yeah,
be going anywhere.
but you
But I
say you
won't be
gotta go to
available.
France or something.
Oh nope, I wish. So one more week in September, we'll wrap back up all the Tokyo Game Show announcements. Of course, we're going into, as Adam said earlier, a pretty busy October and November, and then at that point, we have to start thinking about Game of the Year, I guess. I'm like, oh boy. So it's coming to a head pretty quickly. Thank you all so much for listening. All the features that we talked about and even more that we didn't are up on the site, including all of James's previews and impressions for everything he's played at Tokyo Game Show. You can go to rpgsite.net and you can filter by articles if you want to filter out all the news posts or guides. You also do have all the news and all the trailers and all the release dates up on rpgsite.net as well. Adam, when do you think you'll be publishing the first version of that 2024 page? Just curious.
Maybe this weekend.
All right, so yeah, keep an eye out for
I don't
that.
think we expect any more announcements really soon. I usually wait till after Tokyo Game Show because we usually get a handful of dates, and usually the next set of dates comes in like November.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
Game
I think
Awards era, Jump Festa, that sort of timing. So
yeah, I think the only thing potentially because of the Tokyo Game Show wrapping up, the only other things relevant to our sites, I think there's like a Sandland event state,
Yeah.
so they might announce a release date for that, but that's about it.
So you're saying we got all 4 months to clear our backlogs before all the big major releases come out? Okay.
we're never gonna clear it, Joe.
Well, okay, Chow, the problem with you is like you have to start a game that came out this year,
He did.
and that's
Star Rail.
okay, beyond Star Rail, and I know it's
Star
a big
Rail's a
ask.
full-time job.
There
Did
we go.
Octopath? Okay.
Okay, he
Well,
did.
congrats. Oh, yeah, they did do Octopath.
I know. I don't always play the current releases on time, but I also did the Room Factory Free special. It's
Okay, we're getting there.
Oh yeah,
We're getting
I
there.
forgot to
Current
say
release,
that.
is this a remaster?
Remastered.
From
Yeah. Well,
10 years ago?
Nathan
Nice.
did put up a Rune Factory 3 special review up on the site. So yeah.
I still put up 100 hours in Room Factory Free special.
And being serious, like Adam talked about Vampyr as well, which is not a new game. So that's the hard thing, is that every time you take the time to play something that people have good word of mouth or you're interested in, then you get even further behind on your backlog. That's hard.
I wish I could talk more about Arcturus. I think I would need like 4 hours to fully explain this whole game.
Okay, well, you
Alright,
can go
well.
record your own podcast.
An Arcturus spoiler cast. 20 years in the making.
Featuring Chow.
I think people will tune into that.
I was gonna say, go watch the opening, guys. It's done by the same studio that did Aeon Flux, if anyone still remember that thing.
Ringing
Random
Very pretty.
pivot.
All right, we should wrap it up.
All right, I'm sorry. I was looking at this Arcturus opening and getting distracted. You can find RPG site on all the social media networks. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. You can join our Discord by hitting the link at the top of the rpgsite.net homepage, or go into discord.gg/RPG site. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. Thanks for hanging
we
in
will
there.
be back, not you, next week.
I will be there in
It's
spirit.
getting over.
Oh, so now I'm just now realizing, I guess that means I have 2 weeks to get to Phantom Liberty. Hooray. Maybe I'll finally start Starfield. So we'll be back next week. You will all be back next week. Thank you for sticking in there with this long podcast. We had a lot of news to cover, but back to back, we got everything knocked out from the State of Play, Nintendo Direct, Tokyo Game Show, RGG Direct, everything else. If you have any feedback, please go ahead and give us a rating on whatever podcast service you listen to. Give us a comment on our post on the site page. We love reading those. Let us know what we're doing well, what we're doing poorly. And until you hear from us next time, stay safe and take care. And we will talk to y'all later.